Hiccups. Katamari 999. Summary. Growing Up Haddock Story 8, Life has many ups and downs. What we would like to call hiccups. Hiccups are annoying, complicated. You can't always make them go away. Sometimes it takes time and patience. They can even be painful. But as the Haddocks find out, hiccups are a natural occurrence in life. It's how you deal with them that is the key. Only HTTYD and riders / defenders of Burke are canon. Chapter 1, Moving Day. Chapter text. This is Burke. Families are the cornerstone of our little village. Without love for each other, the island and, indeed, the world would be a bleak place to live. Everyone who lives here is included and loved unconditionally, blood relatives or not. But love is about a lot more than warm and fuzzy feelings. It's easy to love someone through the good times and when they're easy to get along with. The challenge to us all is loving someone even when the going gets tough. Of course, the hardest part of it is knowing who is worth the effort and who you have to let go. It can be tough to make the distinction. But while making the wrong choice can give you devastating consequences, making the right one will give you life's greatest blessings. Fearless Finn Haddock didn't usually tiptoe. He was known for stomping and speaking at an elevated volume without realizing he was doing it. But now he knew he had to be as quiet as possible lest the operation fail. His target was close, the mop of curly brown hair visible from the Haddock boy's vantage point. Finn ducked his head and sneaked into the crowd, his eyes set on his target. A bit closer and the mission would be complete. It was all he could do to stop himself from snickering at his own brilliance. Finally, he was close enough to commit the misdeed he had planned that morning. He readied his projectile and pitched it directly at that curly brown hair. Splash! Gar Finn! Cliff Smedley leaped from his seat, his hair sopping wet and dripping onto his clothes. Finn had only a second to laugh triumphantly before the other boy pursued him. He attempted to push over a table to stop Cliff from catching up, but the boy had been expecting such drastic actions and managed to leap over it with ease. "You will pay for that, Fearless Finn," Cliff bellowed. "Oh, I bet," Finn called back, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. People jumped out of their way, some laughing at the teenagers and others clicking their teeth in disapproval. Finn threw open the large double doors of the great hall and nearly fell down the stairs in his haste. Cliff pursued him with ease, finally catching up to him. Finn had no time to react before he was tackled to the ground by the other boy. Quick as a flash, what had once been Cliff's undeniable triumph had turned into an intense wrestling match. "Boys," came a voice over their heads. Cliff and Finn looked up into the blue eyes of the second most powerful person on Burke. Astrid Horferson Haddock towered over them, looking slightly amused at the violence. "He started it," Cliff informed him. "Threw a water skin right at my head." "Finn." Astrid narrowed her eyes. "Did I not say to pitch those things at each other outside?" "Well, yeah, but he'd be expecting it then," Finn informed her. "As much sense as that makes, your dad doesn't like your shenanigans messing up the Great Hall. Safety issues, not giving the cleaning crew extra work, blah blah blah." Astrid rolled her eyes. "Anyway, you're just lucky he isn't here telling you this himself." "Yeah, because he doesn't get up at the crack of dawn like all the cool kids do." Finn climbed off Cliff and helped him up. At the sight of Astrid's frown, he grinned. "Chillax, Mom. I won't make you wash these grass stains off." "Too right you wouldn't." Astrid playfully punched him on the shoulder. "Because I'd tell you to stuff it if you did. And you'd be very effective at making me stuff it too." Finn put an arm around his mother as they walked back to the Great Hall together, Cliff tagging along behind. "Have I told you that you look beautiful today?" My, Finn, buttering me up this early in the morning." Astrid shook her head. "You must really want something. And gee, I wonder what that could be." She stroked her chin in mock thought. "Could you perhaps be hoping to leave your devastated parents and twin sister to live with goofballs like this one?" She pointed to Cliff, who stuck his tongue out at Finn. "I'm almost 17. Finn half whined. "I've got to set out on my own." "More like you've got to break your mother's heart." Astrid ruffled his hair playfully. "Whatever will I do without my sweet little baby boy?" Blick. Finn made a face. All this just makes me want to get out sooner. Well, your father and I want to keep you around until you're actually an adult. Astrid kissed his cheek and moved toward the breakfast line. And yet you somehow already consider him an adult. Finn pointed to Cliff, who shrugged. Hey now, I didn't choose to be born first. Cliff patted his head. It just happened. Now you're the sweet little baby of our group. You will never let me live that down, will you? Not on your life. Cliff chirped. Now I'm going to finish my breakfast in peace. Feel free to join me, little buddy. You'll be eating your breakfast in pieces if you don't knock that off. Finn yelled after him. I'll risk it. Cliff shouted over the crowd. Finn openly laughed as he joined the line of Vikings waiting for their food. He relished the friendly smiles he received. Most people would take these sorts of things for granted, but it had taken the Haddock boy over a year to stop the glares and sideways looks he had been receiving before. Now, about a year and a half since his enlightening trek across the archipelago, he felt optimistic. Life was getting better with each passing day. Even members of his old gang had become some of his closest friends. Better still, no one batted an eye when they sat together. His dragon, after some incredibly difficult training exercises, tended to remember his commands, though sometimes she pretended she forgot. He never thought in all his life that he would genuinely think this, but he would be in a sad state indeed if he didn't have his friends and family. When Finn had filled his plate with bacon and eggs, he made a beeline over to his usual table. Cliff rolled his eyes as soon as he sat down. One of these days, you will make yourself sick with all that food, he said with a half smile. One of these days, indeed. Finn said before taking a big bite of eggs. But not today. Scoot over, Haddock, came a bossy sort of voice over his head. Finn looked up into the ice blue eyes of Inga Jorgensen. He smirked. You scoot over. Plenty of room here. You're in my spot, she insisted. So budge up. No. Finn stuck his tongue out at her. You'll have to pick a different seat. Well, you've brought it on yourself then. Inga pushed Finn's tray aside with her own and sat down on his lap. Hey. Finn yelped. Get your bony butt off my thigh. Scoot over. Never. Then you'll have to deal with it, Haddock. It's called compromise, the girl smirked. Not that you'd know what that means. I know it means you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Finn tickled her sides, causing her to shriek with laughter. Okay, your highness. Inga squealed, trying to get out of his grasp. No, I'm not done yet. Finn grabbed her waist in an attempt to keep her on his lap, but she was too quick for him. Don't make me kick you where the sun don't shine, she wheezed. Yeah. Well, don't make tickle you again. I didn't make you do anything. You sat on me. You had it coming. Easy there, lovebirds. Cliff butted in. As entertaining as your domestic squabbles may be, I don't want you tearing into each other before you help me move. Yeah. Finn grumbled. At least you can move. Too true. Cliff smiled in a satisfied manner. Now Eric and I'll be real brothers. You weren't brothers before? Inga asked as she sat down next to him. Oh, we were. Cliff clarified. But now we'll be brothers sharing our own bachelor pad. No girls allowed. Well then, I guess I don't have to help you move. Inga snipped with a smirk. Nah. Cliff waved a hand. You don't count. I don't count as a girl. Inga asked in a warning tone that went completely unnoticed by the Smedley boy. I mean, you're a girl, but you're not like a girl. Cliff drew the word out to emphasize it. You're not going to make the place all pink and girly. My sister might. Finn reminded him. Have you seen her room? Butterflies everywhere. It's nauseating. Okay, no girls except Annabelle. Cliff stated, earning himself a punch on the arm from Inga. Okay, Inga's a girl, but she's allowed, and I guess if we're splitting hairs, Taryn's welcome too. So why'd you say no girls allowed? Inga asked. You're supposed to say that. Since when? Inga raised an eyebrow. Since, you know what, I read it somewhere, okay. Cliff glared at Finn, who was snickering at the two of them. So when's your dad going to get back? Inga asked Finn, pointing a piece of bacon at him. Tonight. Finn replied. And his letter yesterday made it sound like he was in a hostage situation. Then again, Ali the insincere is insufferable at the best of times. Everyone nodded emphatically at that statement. The last time Ali had visited, she had callously bragged that her island had a better method for dealing with rogue dragons once she had heard about the most recent raid and even chastised Hiccup for letting those people die to prove a point. Tarin, whose brother had been killed in said raid, locked herself in her bedroom and cried her eyes out for the rest of the day. The thought of dealing with her nonsense for 4 days sounded like a nightmare to them all, but it was that or risk her getting slapped in the face by Tarin's mother. The last thing Burke needed was a war. Well, I didn't meant to change the topic to possibly the most vile woman in the archipelago. Inga stuck her tongue out in disgust. Not that we don't have some contenders here, she added as she spotted Dana Sanders sauntering into the great hall with Kale. I don't know, I think she did Morgan a favor. Cliff shrugged. If Dana hadn't been messing around with Kale, Morgan would still be with that loser. True enough, but that doesn't stop the two of them from being disgusting. Inga made a face. You know, we should invite her to sit with us. Cliff suggested with a faraway look. Now that she's single and lonely. You and Morgan. Finn wrinkled his nose. Hey, go big or go home. Cliff quipped. It's been 2 weeks. Time for her to find somebody new. Someone who will treat her right. Oh yeah, definitely. But anyone willing to date a jerk like Kale for more than 5 minutes doesn't sound like a good choice for anyone with, 2 brain cells. Inga rolled her eyes. Besides, she's flirting with Edgar now. Edgar. Cliff gaped. But he's, way older than her. 5 years. Finn reminded him. And you're not even the only guy pining for her. Evan's been making googly eyes at her for the last month. It's all right. I thrive on competition. Cliff rubbed his hands together. One day, Morgan Sigmund, you will be mine. Inga mimed vomiting, causing Finn to snort with laughter. Cliff gave the two withering gazes, which only made them laugh harder. Just you wait, Finger. Cliff pointed his fork between the two of them. This time, I will be successful. This time, it's true love. Finn had to grit his teeth to stop himself from reminding Cliff of his disastrous attempt to woo Helga several weeks before. Before Helga, Kylan had been Cliff's true love. Both Finn and Inga thought that either Cliff had a lot of soulmates out there or he had no idea how to tell the difference between a silly crush and true love. Well, I'm just about done here, so unless you want to wait for the next hour and a half for Morgan to show up, why don't we start packing up your things so you can settle into your amazing bachelor pad? Finn suggested to his friend. These things take time. I can't just jump in and say hey to the love of my life. I have to be smooth. Cliff made a face that was apparently supposed to be seductive but instead rendered Finn speechless and desperately trying not to crack up. Yeah. Sure. Okay, Cliff, let's just go. Inga patted his back in a somewhat comforting manner before the trio got up and put away their trays. As Cliff chattered about his elaborate plan to woo Morgan, Finn and Inga exchanged exasperated looks. They knew better than to stop him, but they also mentally prepared themselves for whatever was going to happen. At least moving Cliff's things into his new house would keep his mind off of pretty, single girls. For now. Boxes. So many boxes. He used to think only girls had too much stuff. But soon after he began packing, he realized that he had a lot of stuff. Carrying 3 boxes in his arms up a slight incline with only 1.5 legs as support probably wasn't one of his wiser ideas, but it would be a while before his friends came to help. He'd be fine in the meantime. Shoving his body against the door, he managed to jimmy the handle until the door opened a crack. He smacked the door open with his good leg and stepped inside, the steady step thunk of his mismatched legs echoing throughout the empty interior. Eric Larson set the boxes down on the floor with a resounding phew, and looked around. He'd have to decide with Cliff where to put their furniture. The house was small, with a kitchen, living room, and 2 even smaller bedrooms, enough for 2 strapping young bachelors ready to take on the world. The 18-year-old boy ran a hand through his shaggy, wavy blonde hair. He moved toward the door to grab a few more boxes from when his prosthetic teetered precariously. "Ah, really?" Eric muttered, hopping up onto the counter. The straps easily became loose along the base, especially when he exerted himself too much. Not that he thought carrying 3 boxes was too much exertion, but apparently his prosthetic did. Over a year of having 1.5 legs and he was still getting used to it. He'd had many conversations with the chief and Gobber on the ups and downs of being an amputee. Growth spurts, harsh weather conditions, dragon riding, growth spurts, daily exercise, walks around the village, more growth spurts. In truth, he hadn't grown to be very tall. He was still considered average height, unlike Finn or Cliff, who'd both shot up taller than their fathers by now. But every single quarter inch that he grew turned into sleepless nights and writhing pain for days on end that left him weak and disoriented. The first few months of course had been worse. A combination of getting used to the pain and the winter season hitting full force, it was a miracle he'd survived. There were many nights when Eric seriously thought he was going to die. Unfortunately, he got sick a lot easier than Hiccup ever had. The hooligan chief was blessed with a quick healing process unlike anyone else. A year and a half since Eric's accident, and even the slightest taps would send a crippling shock of pain through his system. Eric blew his bangs out of his eyes, tightening a few screws as he thought. A slight tap on the door broke the silence and he looked up. His breath caught his throat, his teal eyes transfixed when she stepped inside. "Hey Adriana," Miracle Haddock smiled, turning in a circle to look at the empty room. "Looks so big when it's empty." "Yeah," Eric murmured, unable to stop staring. Her thick blonde hair was done up in a bun with a braid twisting behind her ear. A few skinny braids wove through the top, pinned into the messy bun. Adriana's bangs rested just off her eyebrows, accenting her sparkling green eyes. "Halloo, Earth," to Eric. Eric snapped out of his daze, looking back down at his prosthetic. His heart pounded in his ears as a blush rose to his face. Sorry. Are you okay?" Adriana stepped forward, resting the back of her fingers on his forehead. Eric leaned his head back, giving her a shy smile. "I'm fine." He was, in fact, most definitely not fine. He couldn't even deny it anymore. No matter what he did or thought or tried to convince himself, Adriana was breathtakingly beautiful. He wanted nothing more than to tell her, to finally be honest with both her and himself and say that he cared for her. Unfortunately, the only thing standing between him and his beautiful best friend was her boyfriend, Brandine Anderson. Every time he saw them together, holding hands in the village or eating in the Great Hall or going on a flight, he wanted to puke. A pang of jealousy would overtake him so suddenly that he could hardly stand it. He never acted on such jealousy, of course. She was clearly happy. He'd never do anything to jeopardize that. So here he was, watching from the sidelines. He'd be forever content as long as they were friends, able to hang out with their inner circle together. But it was during these small stolen moments that made him wish they could be more than what they were. He couldn't help but think back to a few snoggletalks ago when he'd shunned her and ruined their relationship. How different would things be now if he hadn't acted on impulse and anger? Stare at the floor all day. Eric looked up at her in surprise. "What?" Adriana quirked an eyebrow. "I said, are you going to talk to me or stare at the floor all day?" The boy mentally face-palmed. Here he was moaning in his head about not getting to spend time with her like he wanted, and she was standing right in front of him waiting. Literally. "Sorry, just distracted." Eric hopped off the counter, testing his leg out. "A lot on my mind, I guess." "Not for much longer," Adriana smiled, shoving his few boxes off to the side. "Give us a few hours and we'll have all of your junk moved over." "Junk?" Eric pouted. "That junk is valuable, I'll have you know." Adriana snorted. "Really?" She reached into a box, ignoring his indignant cry of disapproval. "Oh yes." Adriana held up a tattered old apron from the leather shop. "Because this old thing must be worth millions. It was my first apron." Eric laughed sarcastically. "It has sentimental value, okay?" "Ah yes." Adriana wrinkled her nose. "All stained, holy aprons do." "Give me that." Eric lunged for the apron before she threw it in his face. "Okay, so maybe I threw whatever was in my dresser into the box without paying much attention." No kidding. There's nothing like bringing the least important things into your new house. Adriana's eyes sparkled. Eric opened his mouth to retort, but her laughing eyes made the thought die in his throat, rendering him speechless once again. He never could decide what he loved more, her hair or her eyes. Adriana's eyes held the same amount of intellect and sarcastic, playful humor as that of her father. He blinked and looked away, rubbing his neck awkwardly. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Adriana studied him curiously, the sparkle in her eyes gone. Eric hoped he wasn't too obvious. Just then, the door lurched open and in strode a certain brunette that made Eric step away from Adriana with fluid steps. Brandine marched toward the corner and dumped 3 boxes on top. Load 1, Brandine said with a false sense of cheer. Anything else you want me to grab? Emphasizing load 1 must mean there's more to grab. Adriana commented. Brandine gave her an exasperated look. You know we had other plans today. Adriana shrugged. I'm well aware that we had plans today, but I also had plans to help Eric and Cliff move. We'll go as soon as we're finished. But that could take all day. Mr. Anderson, are you whining? The blonde tittered. Brandine rolled his eyes. Sorry if being roped into moving day wasn't exactly on my list of things to do. Eric crossed his arms. If you're going to make a stink about it, then you can just go. The Anderson boy gave him a smile. What was that? Adriana sighed. Guys, come on. No, I want to hear what Larson has to say. Eric scowled. This could be fun. Yeah, nothing more fun than moving boxes. It could be fun if everyone present put a little effort into being nice. If you don't want to help, I'm not asking you to stay, Brandine. Eric said patiently. But if you stick around, at least try to have a good attitude so the rest of us don't have to suffer. A muscle stood out in Brandine's jaw. Eric raised his chin defiantly, refusing to stand down. This was their relationship. They didn't argue much, but they had very different views and standards on things. Eric couldn't understand how Adriana could stay with him, and not just because he cared about her himself. Worst of all, Eric seemed to be the only one that wouldn't back down to Brandine. Most other teens would let things go or avoid him completely. Even Finn would give up after a while. But Eric had just enough stubbornness in his blood that he refused to let Brandine win any argument over him, no matter how petty or trivial. He would not be bullied into submission. Adriana stepped between them, glancing between them carefully. Okay, if you guys can't get along. We'll get along once Eric stops being all high and mighty. Brandine hissed. Eric breathed a laugh. Me, high and mighty. Who's the one griping about all of his precious time being wasted? Who's the one complaining about his plans being ruined for the day? Brandine scowled. Who's the one asking for help last minute from people who already have plans? I didn't ask you. Eric shot back, then internally winced. Adriana had invited him. Shaking his head to avoid her gaze, he opened a box. Just whatever. So now it's Anna's fault. Just do whatever you want, Brandine. Don't let me hold you up. No, I think you owe her an apology. Adriana huffed. Oh my gods, would you both stop it? The door squeaked open to reveal Finn holding a couple boxes. He glanced between the boys and sighed. Going at it again. Brandine snorted. Don't look at me. Eric dropped his stuff back in the box and marched to the door. Finn, I need help with something. You okay? Finn dumped the boxes and rushed after his blonde friend. Yeah, that's right, Brandine called out the door. Run away from conflict like you always do. Eric screeched to a halt in the street and whirled around, but Finn pushed him forward with a hand on his chest. Nope, nope. Not even worth it. The blonde allowed himself to be steered back toward the street and toward his family's house. He muttered under his breath about stupid, self-righteous boyfriends as they walked. Finally, Finn sighed. You don't help matters by being snooky, you know. I can't help it. Eric threw out his hands. What do you expect me to do? Take his whining, complaining or insults lying down? I'm sick of hearing it all the time. You're a patient guy, Eric. Maybe Brandine needs a little more dash of patience. So says fearless Finn. Tush, Finn teased. But seriously. One day there might be something worth fighting over with him, but this kind of petty stuff is just that. Petty, stupid. Trust me from experience, save the fight for later. Surely if you both disagree on that many things, then something will come up that's worth fighting over. Eric shook his head. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Especially if he plans on staying long term. He's been here long term, CK. No, I mean. Eric paused momentarily. Long term. As opposed to the short long term. Don't get fresh with me. Finn snickered, pushing the Larsens' front door open. Trust me, right now, he's not even worth it. Besides, he can't really be all that bad if my sister has stayed with him this long. She has pretty good judgment. Eric didn't reply as he tramped up the stairs to his bedroom. He had a few choice comments on that particular subject, but withheld them. It wasn't that he didn't trust Adriana to make good decisions on who she dated. He hoped he didn't feel any ill will simply because of his jealousy. He really did hope that Brandine had worthy qualities that Adriana loved. Thor knew that everyone had personal issues that he or she needed to work through. While his might be the occasional bout of depression or deception, Brandine's might be complaining and contempt. Who knew? Point being, Adriana had stayed with the guy for this long. He had to have some redeemable qualities. He hoped. Chapter 2, The Mark. Chapter text. It was exhilarating to be back in the air again. The ocean raced past the Night Fury's open wings as its rider stared through his mask into the setting sun. Hopefully he would be back on Berk soon. Hiccup Horrendous Haddock 3 had been subjected to some of the worst torture anyone on the archipelago could endure. He had spent 4 days meeting with Ali the Insincere. Of course, her real surname wasn't the Insincere, but her nickname was known all over the archipelago simply because almost nothing that came out of her mouth sounded sincere or even all that friendly, despite her sugary sweet tone. Her actual surname was Friedman, which Hiccup found ironic considering her openness to allowing Outcast Island to participate in the slave trade. He blamed the new Runian chief, Scarlet Deathblow. Rune was always lax with its slave laws, and Scarlet clearly was taking this a step farther than her father. But now wasn't the time to revisit such thoughts. Hiccup was free at last. He had missed his family terribly. Of course, 4 days wasn't that long to be away from his wife and children, but usually Astrid provided him with a welcome distraction during such loathsome meetings. And Finn, though much better than he was a year and a half ago, had a tendency to amuse everyone by making faces at Ali behind her back. Hiccup appreciated his son's attitude when it wasn't directed at him. And as for his daughter, well, he had a lot on his mind already without bringing her into it. After what felt like forever, the shoreline of Berk finally appeared on the horizon. Hiccup took a deep breath, a smile on his lips. He was home at last for the foreseeable future. No more stupid meetings with the chiefs for a long time. It was going to be a perfect summer with his family. At long last, he touched down on Berk's soil. He slipped off Toothless, who clearly was pleased to be home if his cooing in excitement was any indication. Hiccup greeted several people, shaking hands and allowing his fellow Vikings to clap him on the back, when he spotted a familiar mop of bright red hair in the crowd. His face brightened at the sight of his son. It didn't matter how long Hiccup had been gone, Finn always seemed even bigger when he returned. 6 feet, 3 inches with bright blue eyes that were more like Astrid's every day, bulging muscles he could only have inherited from his grandfather, and a crooked smile from his father, Finn certainly stood out in a crowd. Of course, Hiccup only got to look at him for a second before the teenager reached him and threw his arms around him. Hey! Hiccup greeted him, hugging him back with just as much affection. Missed you, buddy. Missed you too. Finn replied. Hiccup never took a single hug from his son for granted. It wasn't too long ago that the big, affectionate teenager had been vandalizing the town and lashing out at his parents. Now Finn, though not perfect, had turned into a trustworthy and respectable young man who clearly adored his parents. That wasn't to say Hiccup and Finn hadn't argued at all in the last year and a half, but the underlying love the two had for each other made such arguments a lot more tolerable. So Finn said when they finally broke apart, "How was Ali?" Nightmarish. Hiccup shook his head. She acted like a nice hostess, but I was afraid she was going to sneak into the guest house in the middle of the night to strangle me. Pretty much same old. Finn rolled his eyes. But you discussed everything that needed to be discussed, right? After a lot of beating around the bush, yes. Hiccup sighed. If she'd cooperated, I'd have been in and out in 2 days, probably less. But she wanted to change the terms of the peace treaty about 20 times before she'd sign it. And even then, I highly doubt she'll stick to it. Wait, so are you saying? We'll talk about this later, kiddo. Hiccup reached up to ruffle his son's hair. Best not to jump to conclusions. Finn made a face but dropped the subject. Hiccup was about to head home when he spotted someone elbowing her way through the crowd. His heart skipped a beat when the radiant face of his wife finally appeared. Astrid smiled widely and threw her arms around him, kissing him so fiercely he stumbled backward. Even after 2 decades of marriage, Hiccup melted a little bit when his exceptionally adept wife kissed him as passionately as she did now. At long last, their lips separated with a tiny pop. Hi. Astrid breathed through a small laugh. Hey. Hiccup brushed her bangs from in front of her eyes. Missed you. Not as much as I missed you. Astrid pecked his lips again. Let's go home. Hey now, I was only gone 4 days. Did you really miss me that much? Hiccup raised an eyebrow. Whoa, someone's jumping to conclusions. Astrid chortled. I just wanted to talk. Were you expecting something more? Maybe. Hiccup winked at her. We'll have to find out, won't we? Feisty. I like it. Astrid whispered. Though we should save it for when there isn't a crowd. Agreed. Hiccup said, smirking at the look of disgust on his son's face. What, you should be glad your parents still kiss. You're old. Finn stuck out his tongue. When I do it, it's hot. I don't know, when you do it, I still see my itty-bitty baby with his tongue down some girl's throat. Astrid smirked. That's your problem though, isn't it? Finn shrugged. Well go then. Go kiss some girls, your mom and I have some catching up to do. Hiccup told him without taking his eyes off of Astrid. Hiccup internally marveled at how easily he had spoken that last statement to his son. 2 years ago, he'd have been afraid of finding Finn in a closet with his shirt off and his tongue plundering the inside of Helga's mouth. Now such a statement could be rattled off as a quip with no fear of repercussion. Finn had standards and Helga had another boyfriend. He glanced over at his son in time to see him do a mock salute and scamper away, probably to pick on Cliff some more. Astrid put her arm around his waist and led him through the group of people welcoming him home. He said a few friendly greetings but his attention was on his wife. He slipped his arm around her shoulders as they walked. So Eric and Cliff are finally roommates. Astrid said when the crowd dispersed. Yeah. How's that? Hiccup asked, genuinely curious. Well, Audrey and Finn helped them move and now they are probably still putting things away. Astrid glanced over in the direction of the little house. I'm liking how tight-knit those 4 are getting. Cliff's a good influence on Finn. Yeah, when he's not pranking him. Hiccup shrugged. Any new shenanigans? I caught them wrestling outside the Great Hall this morning. Astrid told him. Same as usual. Ah. Teenagers. Hiccup smirked. Such a strange part of nature. We all had to suffer through it. Astrid reminded him. You dealt with your hormonal angst by rebelling against our entire way of living, so you can't say you weren't a handful at that age. Oh, I didn't. Hiccup laughed. And I got lucky too. Dated the hottest girl in the archipelago because of that rebellion. Yeah, you were lucky. Astrid poked him in the stomach, making him emit an unmanly giggle. I'd like to think luck had little to do with it. Hiccup squeezed her shoulder. I was a handsome lad in the day. You're handsome now. Astrid patted his cheek. In a mature way, you know. Nothing says handsome like gaining weight and going grey. Hiccup ran his fingers through his hair. You're 38. It was bound to happen. Besides, you filled out. Astrid shrugged. That's all part of growing older. You didn't think you'd stay a toothpick forever, did you? I guess not. Hiccup conceded. It just seems like my name no longer applies to me anymore. You wanted it to. Astrid smiled fondly at him. Why so hard on yourself all of a sudden? I don't know. Kids are growing up. Pretty soon, we could have an empty nest. Hiccup sighed. I like having kids in the house. Makes me feel young. The twins stopped being children a while ago. Astrid reminded him. They're growing up. Yeah. Hiccup agreed. Hiccup, came a voice from their left. They turned just in time to see Eric walking over to them, a slight limp in his gait. Hiccup let go of Astrid's shoulder and embraced Eric like a son. When they broke apart, he smiled. Eric looked as he always did nowadays, confident with a bit of a mischievous gleam in his teal eyes. The sight reminded Hiccup of himself at that age. The last year and a half had changed the youngest Larson for the better once he could finally walk on his prosthetic without help. Glad you're back. Eric gave him a dimpled smile. We'll have to catch up later though. Finn split and we're still trying to figure out the furniture arrangement in the house. Where's Addie? Hiccup asked him. Around. She left with Brandine a little before Finn did. They're probably off making out somewhere. Eric made a face. Anyway, I don't want to keep you from settling in at home. No problem. Hiccup clapped Eric on the back. Plenty of daylight left. I could actually achieve something useful. Better than my week with little Miss Insincere. Hiccup. Astrid elbowed him in the ribs. Don't badmouth other chiefs in front of impressionable kids. I'm 18. Eric reminded her. Hardly a kid. You'll always be a kid to me. Astrid patted his head. A cute little kid who used to make a face every time I made Icelandic cod for dinner. Hey, I still ate it if you offered it. Eric protested. You did. It was polite but completely obvious how much you hated it. Astrid said, looking slightly nostalgic. Reminds me of this one when I made eel. She nudged her husband. It's rubbery. Hiccup made a face. No wonder the dragons hate it. You two are such picky eaters. Astrid rolled her eyes. I swear, you make dinner time so well. Hello, little cutie, the haddock matriarch gushed. Ava Thorsten giggled at being acknowledged. Astrid reached down to pick her up. The nearly 2-year-old immediately grabbed her braid. Oh hi, sweetie. Hiccup grinned widely at the toddler. Did you slip away from your daddy again? Ava tugged on the braid, prompting Astrid to attempt to unclench her fist. Sure enough, as soon as Ava had decided that Astrid's necklace was more interesting, Tough Nut came jogging over. There's my little ray of sunshine, he cooed at his daughter. You really need to keep a better eye on your child. Hiccup said seriously. All kinds of things can happen in the split second you're not paying attention. I know. Tough Nut said as he took the toddler from Astrid. I'm really working on that. I mean it, Chief Hiccup. I've never worked so hard to keep anything alive. Gotta get eyes like a hawk. He peered intensely into Ava's grey eyes, making her burst out laughing. You like hawks, do you? He suddenly let out a comical screech and carefully flew his little girl around the haddocks. She squealed with delight. Gotcha in my claws, little missy. What you gonna do now? Ha. Ha, he affectionately kissed her cheek. Oh gods, is that what I looked like in the early days? Hiccup asked his wife, who snorted. Even more sappy than that, she replied. And you're pretty quiet, Mr. Larson. She turned to Eric, who was watching Tough Nut and Ava play almost wistfully. Ha. Eric looked over at Astrid. Oh, just thinking about how scary it is that I'm old enough to have my own kids now. Not scary. Hiccup smiled. Unless you don't actually want them. Oh no, I do. Eric clarified. Definitely. You know, someday. Yeah, best not to rush into these things. Hiccup patted Eric's shoulder. But it'll happen for you. If you say so. Eric sighed. Hiccup wanted to chat with Eric some more, but he was suddenly ambushed by a group of little Larsons. Eric's niece and nephews crowded around the haddock couple. "You're back," shouted Gustav's middle son. "Now you can go dragon racing." "What?" Hiccup laughed. "Come on, kiddos. You don't want to see an old man like me playing silly games. Please, Mr. Hiccup." Lala, the only girl in the group, pleaded. "Oh, come on, Mr. Hiccup." Eric chortled, picking up his little niece. "You've got to show these kiddies what a real dragon rider can do." "Excuse me, but I believe you have a dragon as well." Hiccup narrowed his eyes at Eric. "Yeah, but these kids want to see the Dragon Conqueror in action." Eric held up his hand in surrender. "I have a lot of experience trying to resist their spell, but takes great strength, and last I checked, you're a sucker for the big, sad eyes." He turned to Lala. "Do the sad face." Lala looked at Hiccup with big, blue eyes. "Ah." Hiccup sighed dramatically. "You've found my one and only weakness. Hiccup, you should really go home and relax. There's plenty of time to dragon race later." Astrid told him. "Oh, come on." Tough Nut piped up. "It's been ages since the last time, and we gotta give these kiddos a show. Isn't that right, Princess?" he added to his daughter. "I'm fine, Astrid. I've had several days of inactivity. It's time to loosen up, do something fun." Hiccup could tell her resolve was crumbling. She never could turn down an opportunity to show off. "Please. Let's go for it. Like old times." "Oh, all right. How can I say no to that face?" Astrid pinched his cheek. "Easily." Hiccup deadpanned. "You do it all the time. So, meet at the arena in half an hour then." Tough Nut looked extremely excited. "Okay. Come on, Toothless. We've got a village to wow." Hiccup laughed at his dragon, who was suddenly full of energy and enthusiasm despite their long flight. "Awesome." Tough Nut cheered. "I'm going to announce it to everyone, and then we're gonna kick your butts in front of the whole village. You just keep believing that, Tough." Astrid smirked at him. "Just keep on believing." Tough Nut scampered away, his happy toddler grinning at her ham of a daddy. Despite being slightly tired from the long flight home, Hiccup was excited. He loved dragon racing. He loved showing off his skills to the village and reminding them that he really was the best. And, with such a willing audience, he felt it was time to show Eric what someone with a peg leg could do, given enough time. Finn couldn't be more excited. A year and a half ago he saw his parents and their friends do their first dragon racing competition in years, and it had been amazing. He couldn't believe how agile his parents and their dragons had been in the air. His dad especially had surprised him in many ways. The chief was usually so busy, he and Toothless never got much flight time in other than typical travel from place to place. Apparently they still had a few tricks up their sleeves. He couldn't wait to see them race again. All of his friends eagerly helped the adults pull tarps off the various dragon racing beams and used pulleys to put up flags. Finn himself was helping Evan carry a large bench to the bleachers so the teens would have a front row seat. They dropped it and leaned over the edge, watching the action below. "You look excited," Evan commented cheekily. "You're not?" Finn asked incredulously, rapping his knuckles against the metal railings. "It's not every day you get to see the original riders duke it out." "Truth," Evan nodded, glancing down. "Larson's got his hands full." Finn looked down in time to see Eric shoo his niece and nephew out of the way. A few men marched past carrying more spare benches. Apparently the whole village turned out to see the race. They needed every seat they could get. Eric stood talking to his brother's kids when a little girl ran in, dragging a thick wooden plank. Finn wasn't sure what she was doing, but she seemed to be following the men, judging by the cheery grin on her face and extra bounce in her step. However, she paused mid-step and whirled around to look behind her. The plank whipped over her shoulder and smacked Eric right above his prosthetic. Eric's cry of pain echoed through the general area as he crumpled to his left knee. Finn turned and ran for the stairs, dodging villagers in his haste. He plowed through the doors and ran to his friend, who was slowly standing back up and shakily assuring the little girl and his niece and nephew that he was fine. The little girl looked close to tears. "I didn't mean it." "I know you didn't," Eric said softly. Finn admired his compassion even now, but he could see the difficulty his friend was going through. "It was an accident." I know I've smacked a few people on accident before. Just promise me you'll be careful. The girl nodded, her pigtail braids bobbing in tandem. She picked up her wooden plank and ran away hastily. As soon as she was gone, Eric turned to Finn, his face paling. I gotcha. Finn grabbed his arm and helped him to the nearest bench. Eric bit his lip, groaning with every step. He eased the blonde down and watched him, unsure how else to help. Eric leaned over, clutching his hair in a white-knuckled grip. Finn could see the sweat accumulating on his forehead. Eric, breathe. Eric released a shuddering breath. He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Gee, good thing I wasn't racing today. No kidding. You saw that? Finn looked up at the higher platform and found Evan still watching from above. He flashed him a thumbs up before replying to Eric, yeah, I was up there. Huh. Eric managed, rubbing his sweaty palms on his knees. He slowly exhaled once more. You going to be okay? Finn asked in concern. Eric nodded, eyes downcast. Yeah. I'll just sit for a bit. All right, Finn said, scratching his neck. I can find charger if you want to get a better V. That's okay. Eric said quickly, faking a smile. I'll walk up there soon. Finn felt his heart crush a little. He couldn't deny the guilt that still welled up every time his friend was in pain. Sure, he'd been forgiven. Sure, they'd rebuilt their friendship. But his friend was still in physical pain and it was still his fault. I'm sorry. Eric looked up at him through his bangs. Finn, I'm fine. No, you're not. Man, we don't have to go over this again. I can't help it. Finn grouched. I did this to you. Finn, come on. Eric stood, stubbornly hiding his wince and slapping the haddock's hand away when he tried to steady him. When are we going to just move past it? It was accident. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for me. Finn crossed his arms. Do you want me to be angry? Eric asked. Do you want me to ignore you and act like you don't exist? I don't know about you, but I'd rather forgive and forget it. Finn frowned. What? I want my friend to stop worrying about me. Eric said. It's harder for me to accept it when you bring it up, and I'm not blaming you when I say that. I appreciate your willingness to help me. But I'm fine, really. It doesn't hurt that often, I just don't heal as fast as my dad. Finn said. Yeah, Eric admitted. Sorry, Finn said quietly. Stop apologizing. I'm sorry for being sorry. Finn threw out his hands. Shut up, Haddock. Fine, fine. Finn grinned, but was suddenly distracted by his parents and their dragons walking in with a herd of people on their heels. Oh gods, let it begin. Eric laughed. I'll catch up with you. You sure? Yes. Finn shrugged, ignoring his overprotective conscience. All right, see you up there. Jogging toward his parents, he couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. His parents were both dressed in their best flight suits and even sported some war paint on their faces. Toothless and Stormfly were also fancied up with paint to coordinate with their riders. I see you broke out the war paint. Finn said, falling into step with his parents. Hiccup grinned. Call it a blast from the past. That's what we'll be saying when we whoop your butt, Astrid taunted. Dream on. Hiccup smirked. We still got a few leftover tricks, don't we, bud? Gah, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm going to get my seat before some dummy steals it. Finn said, jogging forward. Break a leg. Ha ha ha. Hiccup deadpanned. Never heard that one before. Finn laughed as he ran up the rest of the incline. He made it to the top and jumped over Inga and Alton's knees, taking his spot on the end. He was surprised for a moment to see Eric sitting in the row across from him, but a moment later noticed Charger standing behind him. Apparently he'd taken a flight to the top after all. At long last, the horn blew and the crowds cheered. Finn bounced in excitement as his parents and all their friends marched in with their dragons. Hiccup and Toothless stood in the middle, as was custom when the chief played, and as usual his wife and her dragon stood just to their right. Next in sequence were Snotlout and Hookfang with their yellow and red war paint, and Fishlegs and Meatlug with orange and green. Finn did a double take when he looked on his father's left where the twins, Rough Nut and Tough Nut, stood beside their hideous Zippyback, Barf and Belch. The twins and dragon were divided by colors. Rough Nut and Barf had teal and yellow accents while Tough Nut and Belch sported yellow and black. Lots and lots of black. Wow, Tough Nut looks like one of those indigenous tribes in a book I have. Adriana stated down the row. Finn barely caught the look of irritation flash on Brandine's face. He could relate, nobody else knew what she was talking about. Oh man, this is going to be insane. Finn murmured, his knees bouncing. Hold still, haddock. Inga hissed, then suddenly screamed, go daddy. Drum, Finn griped, rubbing his ear. Oh, did Whittle Finnuini get a boo-boo? Inga taunted. Sure. Finn silenced her when Gobber took to the podium, issuing the crowds to quiet. As per usual, the rules are simple. Each sheep is worth 1 point and it must be put in your designated basket. The black sheep at the end is worth 10 points. You may use weapons and pranks and other shenanigans may be pulled on the field. Try not to kill anyone. Gobber added dryly, sending a chatter of laughter to move through the stands. Saddle up. The adults eagerly jumped into their saddles. Finn saw his dad snap Toothless' tail fin open wide. The riders tensed, readying for the horn. Finn leaned forward in anticipation. Hiccup hadn't felt this excited in a long, long time. The second the horn was blown, Toothless snapped forward into the air, pulling his hair against his scalp and filling his lungs with cold air. He urged his dragon to pick up speed as they led the way over the village. He tuned out the screaming villagers and the twins smack-talking somewhere behind them, and issued Toothless into a steep dive. Within seconds, the Night Fury had a braying white sheep in his clutches. Toothless put on a burst of speed, circling the outer village and spinning to avoid Stormfly coming up on his flank. The Nada shot spines at them, Toothless tucked and dropped like a rock toward the water at breakneck speeds. Most people would be confused at their sudden descent, but clicking Toothless' tail into the fastest position, they soared toward the finish line at top speeds. Hiccup didn't need to check to make sure the sheep made it into the basket, Toothless never missed. They rounded the bend once more, already searching the village for more sheep. Apparently they'd caught on to what was happening by now because there were no fluffy white balls to be seen. Let's see if we can grab two, Bud Hiccup said. Toothless nodded in assent before they took another steep dive into the streets. They turned a sharp corner and a group of sheep brayed in fear, running in the other direction. Get him, Bud. Toothless put on a burst of speed, catching up to the sheep quickly. The village opened up to the cliffside just beyond the street. They'd be able to grab two sheep and continue on without. Ah! Hiccup snapped Toothless' gear into a higher position so they flipped over Snotlout and Hookfang, who zoomed in from a side street with Dragon aflame. Sorry to burst your bubble, Chief, but those sheep are mine. Not a chance, Snotlout. It was neck and neck as they tracked the sheep toward the village square. Toothless managed to grab a sheep before the others got away, scared off by Hookfang's flames. Snotlout snatched one sheep off the ground in passing before hollering at Hiccup to come back with his sheep. Hiccup looked over his shoulder, surprised to see the twins each carrying a sheep. If they could somehow steal at least one and cause some kind of ruckus, they'd be good for round 3. Get me in close, Bud. He could hear the roaring crowds growing closer as they neared the front lines once more. Toothless swooped in close as Hiccup guided him underneath the Zippyback's soft underbelly. Hiccup knew from experience with many Zippybacks that they were usually very ticklish just under their long neck. As they flew underneath, he reached up and rubbed his nails along Belch's neck. The dragon head spasmed and shook back and forth, sending Tough Nut nearly in free fall. Hey what's going way. Toothless swooped to the side just as Tough Nut dropped his sheep, which fell directly into Hiccup's arms. He saluted Rough Nut as she scowled at him, trying to keep their dragon, and brother, in the air. Thanks. Hiccup, you'll pay for this. The chief laughed as he and his dragon shot forward, waiting to drop both of the sheep into their basket. Toothless dropped his in first before dropping, looping around and swooping back over the bridge for Hiccup to throw his in as well. The Night Fury flew back toward the village in time for Meatlug and Stormfly to fly at them from the sides. Oh, it's on. Hiccup smirked, ducking low to his dragon's back and snapping the tail into another position. The chief knew his dragon could outrun both of theirs, but Fishlegs had smarts and Astrid had endurance and power and, well, pretty much everything he had. He learned long ago not to underestimate them. If it's a race they want, but let's give them a race. Toothless roared in approval, shooting forward and weaving through the streets and breakneck speeds. They quickly lost Meatlug in the fray, but Stormfly wouldn't be deterred. The girls never caught up or fell behind, but they couldn't be shaken. Hiccup began to think his way through a plan when Astrid yelled, "What are you waiting for? A shoulder to cry on when you lose." Hiccup smirked, eyeing the buildings surrounding them. He knew he'd have a lot of work to do for wrecking things, but right now he didn't care. His competitive side was on overdrive and his reputation as a winner was at stake. He wasn't sure who was winning the race so far, but they had 3 sheep for less than 10 minutes of playtime. The black sheep had to be coming any minute. Right now, it was all or nothing. Rising out of his crouch, Hiccup unsheathed his sword and swung at the nearest rope that held up scaffolding. He heard the girls gasp in shock and assumed they had to break their flight pattern to escape the oncoming wreckage. They exited the village and flew through the hatchery and water basin before they flew the curvature of the large stone spire. "Hey! You're going to pay for that!" Hiccup groaned. He just wanted to finish this lap. Why did his wife have to be so aggressive? Yanking his sword back out, he slammed the blade into the stone as they flew. He urged Toothless to pick up speed, sending rock, dust and sparks raining behind them. Hiccup gritted his teeth, looking behind in time to see Stormfly drop 30 feet below to avoid the cloud. The chief was thankful the wind doused the flames on his sword enough for him to put it away. Toothless, Hiccup said, looking down at an unsuspecting Fishlegs far below them with 2 sheep in his beefy arms. "Let's pay our friend a visit." Twisting in midair, the Night Fury dropped, sending a sonic whistle through the air. Fishlegs began to scrabble for the reins as Meatlug began to panic. Both sheep ended up falling toward the ocean in free fall. Toothless cackled as they snatched up one of the sheep, the poor thing braying anxiously. Hiccup glanced over in time to see Astrid snatch up the other sheep before pulling out of their dive. The chief urged his dragon toward the finish once more to toss their sheep back inside. A quick glance at the other baskets showed a close game. Thankfully Fishlegs had a few sheep in there, so he felt less guilty about stealing the 2 he just had. Then again, Butterfingers. Stormfly flew right on their tail as suddenly the large horn blew. The black sheep. Toothless up up up. The Night Fury shot above the village as fast as dragonly possible, waiting for the fuzzy ball of fluff to fly into the sky. Within seconds, the black sheep emerged near Mara's house. Toothless shot forward, ignoring the other 4 dragons flying in from all the other directions to catch it. Hiccup snapped his dragon's tail just a bit farther and they snatched the black sheep out of the air, right in front of Snotlout. "Hey!" Snotlout screamed just before a certain Gronkle plowed into him. Hiccup laughed and zoomed through the various buildings, knowing his wife and friends were right on his tail. He could hear the twins still smack-talking each other, just like old times. "Come on, Toothless, we're almost there." Hiccup yelled, but suddenly Toothless yelped and they plummeted 10 feet. What a pair of grinning blue eyes peeked out from beside him. "Astrid." "Sorry babe," she cooed, kissing his cheek. "We gotta take this one." "What do you wait?" Astrid loosed a buckle on Toothless' rigging, sending them plummeting to the ground. Hiccup and Toothless yelled as the trio free fell with the sheep screaming in Toothless' arms. As Hiccup scrambled for the rigging, Astrid maneuvered around the dragon and yanked the sheep out of his claws. "Thanks." She leaped off in time for Stormfly to catch her, flying away rapidly toward the finish line. Hiccup leaned over the side, yanking the rigging back into place as fast as he could while the water loomed below. "Come on, come on." Finally, the rigging snapped into place. He yanked up on the steering and Toothless roared at the ocean defiantly. At the last second, they blasted across the surface of the ocean, spraying water in all directions. Hiccup saw the others nearing the finish line. They wouldn't win the race, but they couldn't come in last. Toothless roared competitively when Hiccup urged him to go faster. Within seconds, they caught up to the rest of the group. They blasted across the finish line at the same time as Snotlout, the twins and Fishlegs right on their heels. The crowds roared, drowning out the sounds of their heavy breathing. Hiccup sat up as Toothless gradually slowed to a drift. His heart pounded in his chest so rapidly, he thought it might burst. He hadn't had a thrill like that in years. They seriously needed to do this more often. He bent over and patted Toothless on the neck. "Good game, bud." Toothless rumbled in agreement. Hiccup twisted in his saddle and ducked in time for his wife and Stormfly to blast over their heads, cheering above the crowds and pumping her fists just like old times. He didn't know where the time had gone, but some things never changed. When his mother crossed the finish line and threw the black sheep into her basket, Finn could have exploded with pride. But when his dad caught up to the others in 3 seconds flat after nearly plummeting into the ocean, he cheered like a wild man. When Toothless and the other dragons blasted across the finish line, all the teens' hair was blown back from their faces, sticking up in awkward angles. Finn laughed along with the other kids, noticing Brandine sitting sullenly on the other end of the bench. He sat stooped over the edge, staring in Finn's general direction, looking completely bored. He didn't know how the guy didn't get a rush out of such a competitive race. Suddenly, Brandine's eyes focused on him and his expression morphed into one of shock and confusion. Finn frowned, confused himself, when he realized something. His hair was still blown back. The slave mark. Quickly, he shoved his hair down and faced forward, unsure of what to do. Brandine hadn't known about his past, not enough for details. The family had never thought it his business to know, so he'd never been told. But now, he glanced down the row at Brandine, who was giving him the strangest, most calculating smirk he'd ever seen on the boy's face. Brandine finally looked away, but the remnants of a hidden grin remained on his features. Finn flushed, suddenly wanting to run away. Just as quickly, he stamped out those feelings. He needed to learn to face these things head-on. Surely Brandine wouldn't be the first to accidentally discover the mark. He needed to be able to talk about it. But not now, there were too many people and it would be hard to hear with all the cheering and screaming. He'd talk to Brandine later, maybe at work. So instead, he stood tall and cheered back at his mother, who triumphantly stood atop her ladder. 10 minutes later, his parents finally landed and hopped to the ground. Finn could see that the stress lines had left his mother's face and the bright light of excitement in his father's eyes was insurmountable. They almost looked like kids, managing to smack talk and compliment each other at the same. They needed to do this more often, he thought, not only because it was fun to watch, but also because it seemed to take years off of them. That was amazing, Finn said, running forward and slinging his arms around their shoulders. I don't even know where to begin. How about at the part where she unclipped the rigging and nearly killed us? Hiccup said. You enjoyed the challenge, Astrid fired back. Well, I made you eat dust at any rate. Literally, Finn chortled. You didn't ruin your sword when you did that, did you? Hiccup pulled it out and checked the blade. No, it's pretty strong metal. It could probably use a nice sharpening though. Remind me later and I'll do it. All right. Hiccup looked around. Where are Addy and Brandine? Finn said, turning in a circle. Don't know. They were here not long ago. Guess they cleared out fast. The light in his father's eyes dimmed ever so slightly at that, but it was fleeting. Wherever he is, he better get to the forge right quick, Gobber said. We've got lots of work to do. Or boo. Finn frowned. His father smiled. It's all right, we can talk more about my awesomeness over dinner. And my supreme excellence? Astrid asked. We will talk about your supreme excellence over your supremely excellent dinner. Hiccup nodded. Astrid grinned smugly. I thought so. Can't wait. Finn grinned, following Gobber out the gate. See you later. Brandine and Adriana hurried down a deserted alley, their hands clasped tightly. Adriana found it slightly odd that he had taken her from the game seconds after its end, but she liked surprises and she hoped this was one worth skipping her mother's triumphant walk to her adoring fans. Slow down, she laughed as he hurtled behind 2 buildings and peered around as if they were being followed. What's the rush? I just don't want to get interrupted. Brandine said shortly. Come on, let's go in that barn over there. Barn. Adriana huffed a bit as she was running to keep up with her boyfriend. Really, Brandine? That's so cliché. Oh hush. Brandine threw open the barn door and shooed out a terrible terror from within. Adriana fell back against the hay as Brandine slammed the barn door shut. The dim light shining through the few windows gave the place an eerie illumination. She liked the ambience. She really liked her boyfriend's spontaneity. Finally. Brandine stated with a wide grin. Alone time. I thought you didn't like it. Adriana pointed out. You said we need to hang out with people more often. I didn't say I like it all the time. Brandine sighed. Do you want to do this or not? Adriana's stomach clenched. She was annoying him again. Sorry. Brandine smiled triumphantly and leaned over her in the hay. Their lips met, immediately sending a warm feeling through Adriana's stomach. She loved being kissed by him. Her boyfriend's hands skimmed her waist before resting on her hips, his thumbs digging into her hip bones as he kissed her more fervently. He sighed heatedly, brushing his tongue against her lips. Adriana sucked his top lip into her mouth, pulling him closer than before. Soon his chest was top of hers and his knees were on either side of her legs and all she could think about was Brandine. She could feel her heart rate quicken when he began to mouth her jaw and make his way down her neck. He reached up and tilted her jaw up, baring her throat to his open-mouthed kisses. Adriana moaned, pulling at his shirt on his back and feeling his strong muscles beneath the material. When he kissed her like this, she couldn't help but feel amazing. Wanted. No boy had ever treated her like this before and he made her feel fantastic. She almost never wanted him to stop, but knew that couldn't happen. They had to stop at some point. Brandine began to slide his hands up her shirt as he ducked his head and began kissing down her chest. Wait, maybe that's a bit too much. Her boyfriend pulled away from her skin with a loud pop, staring up at her in the dim light with a hungry glint. His eyes were teasing but also serious. Toying with your tank top is too much. Adriana breathed a laugh, barely able to think straight with his strong fingers massaging the skin of her waist. Brandine returned his mouth to her chest, moving along the line of her shirt. Across, downward, lightly pressing the material farther down. She closed her eyes and bit her lip, forcing herself to push his face away from her chest. No matter how amazing his mouth felt on her body, she wanted to save the intimate details for later. Brandine's hands froze at her sides. Come on, Nani, he whimpered. Don't ruin it. Adriana kissed him gently as she put her hands on top of his. This is nice, she whispered. No, Brandine's jaw tightened and he straightened up. This is boring. Boring. Adriana sat up. How is it boring? We always just kiss, Anna. And you don't let me do any more than that, he growled. I can't just do the same thing over and over. You need to trust me. I do. Then just let me do this. He leaned in and kissed her nose. Let me show you how much I care about you. We don't need to get more physical than this, Brandine. Adriana reached up and stroked his cheek. We're not married. So that's it? Brandine asked through gritted teeth. I don't want to wait that long, babe. Adriana felt her heart constrict. Was she hearing what she thought she was hearing? As if to answer her unspoken question, Brandine began to stroke the inside of her thigh. She felt her whole body heating up. A tiny part of her wanted this. It had been nearly 2 years since she and Brandine had begun dating and he had never touched her like that before. Feelings she'd never had before ignited within her like toothless plasma blasts and it took all her willpower to shift away from Brandine's hand. Not yet, she said firmly. I want to wait. We don't have to go all the way. Brandine moaned in her ear, his hand moving from her thigh to snake up her shirt. There's plenty of other things we can do. She wanted this. His hand on her stomach, slowly drifting toward her chest, was awakening desires she'd never had before. She wanted to rip off his shirt and run her fingers over his bare chest and back. She felt a sudden, intense urge to throw caution to the wind, to do things to him that she knew were foolish and dangerous outside of marriage. Brandine planted kisses on her neck, his warm breath tickling her slightly, and she felt herself burn with desire. Stop, she breathed. He continued kissing her, his mouth trailing down her collarbone. Bran. Hush, he whispered. Just trust me. His lips were too low now. His thumbs pulled down her shirt so he could continue planting kisses down her chest. Adriana dearly wanted him to continue, wanted to go as far as any two people could in this situation. But something in her gut told her that it was wrong. This wasn't where she wanted to do this. This wasn't when she wanted to do this. And no, she said firmly. I want you to stop. Brandine's head shot up. I told you to trust me. This is too much right now. Adriana insisted. I told you I wanted to wait for this. Fine. Brandine got off of her and straightened up. I guess you can't trust me. And why should you? Apparently I'm not worthy enough to show you how I feel about you. That's not it at all. Adriana stood up, feeling a bit shaky on her feet. I just wanted to wait until you're married. Brandine interrupted. Listen, Anna, no guy wants to wait that long. Doesn't matter if it's me or Eric or anyone. We have needs. And you're not meeting those needs. What needs? Physical needs. Brandine snapped. Forget it, you could never understand. Hey, Adriana took a step forward and grasped his hand. Help me understand. This isn't going to be one of those heart-to-hearts you're always having. Brandine looked away from her. You're not old enough to get married and I've waited a really long time. I'm not asking for sex. I'm asking for something more than what we're doing now. Unless. He faced her. Unless you want to break up. Adriana's insides froze. What? Well, I don't. Brandine shrugged. I want to stay together. You're a great girlfriend, but I need more than that. You know I do. And I don't want to have to break up with you because you're not doing your part. Okay. Adriana nodded reluctantly. I'll think about it. Don't just think about it. Brandine commanded. This isn't one of your books. It's not something you think about. It's something you feel. But I guess you don't care about me as much as I care about you. Before Adriana could respond, he wrenched his hand out of her grip and marched through the door, slamming it behind him. The Haddock girl stood alone in the empty barn. She didn't want to lose her boyfriend. She loved him. She would never find anyone who made her feel like that again. She had been hurt by so many people, she needed someone who would love her and only her. That person was Brandine. She needed him more than he could ever understand. But, this. Adriana left the barn and began walking in the direction of home. She was going to have to think about her relationship a little bit more. Brandine showed up at the forge a couple minutes late, mumbling a response. Gobber merely pointed at the pile of broken tools and weapons that needed fixing. He set to work across from Finn, leaving the room in silence except for Gobber's whistling in the background. They worked for a few hours, talking a little here and there about the race or the struggles of customer service, but at long last Gobber stepped away from the anvil. All right, you lot, the old man said, marching to the back door. I need a wee. Finn made a face. Great. I hope it all comes out okay. Brandine snorted across from him. Finn bit his tongue to prevent more sarcastic remarks from popping out of his big mouth. Silence filled the entire forge as both young men worked on their projects, which strangely didn't make much noise. The Haddock boy could feel the tension rising that always came with an awkward silence. So, the slave mark, huh? Finn dropped his tool with a clang and stared up at the other boy, who merely smirked. He snatched his tool back up and got back to work. You weren't supposed to see it. I figured. Is that why you never cut your hair? For your information, I like my long hair. Finn remarked. After a beat of silence, he nodded. And I suppose it helps with that. So what's the scoop? Brandine leaned forward, clearly uninterested in working. He rested his chin in his palm, light blue eyes aglow. Were you really adopted as a child? Finn's face fell flat. Pretty sure I have some fairly memorable Haddock and Horferson qualities. Okay, Brandine chortled. But no mark like that comes without an interesting story. So spill. Finn sighed, turning to throw some tools into a bin behind him. It's nothing less interesting than a stupid little boy running away from home and getting himself into a world of trouble. Literally. Sounds like fun. Not fun. Finn frowned. He continued tinkering in silence, ignoring Brandine's patient expression. Finally, he relented. My parents were fighting a lot. After the duel with Dager the Deranged, my dad wasn't really the same guy. Brandine snorted derisively, slowly returning to a standing position. What, like he went on a victory streak? Oh no. Finn raised an eyebrow. He was angry all the time. He didn't eat or sleep or talk to anyone, except when he did you didn't want to hear what he had to say. He was mean. Brandine hummed noncommittally. Interesting. Why is that interesting? Because it's kind of hard to believe, Brandine shrugged. The scariest I've seen him was that one meeting in the Great Hall in front of the whole village. Surely you remember that? Finn scowled. The big warning to the gang he'd created to turn themselves in or face the chief's wrath. Oh yeah, he remembered that. How things would be different now if he'd listened earlier, at least for Eric anyway. Yeah, well, he was worse. Anyway, my parents fought all the time. Anna fought with our mom. I just got sick of it. Hopped on Johann's ship and took a trip to Rune. Brandine laughed mirthlessly. Wow, Rune. Of all places. You've been there? Finn inquired. The teen shook his head. Unfortunately. Not a pleasant place. No kidding. Finn agreed. I ran into a man named Jarvan. Man, you really got the short end of the stick. Finn paused. What, you know him too? I've been around. Brandine tapped the side of his nose. Continue. The haddock shrugged off his confusion. Anyway, he sold me to the slave trade. And I was taken a long, long way from here. Finn glanced at the back door. Gobber was having a real long wee. Where? If I tell you, I'm afraid you'll say you've been there and knew the people I met. Brandine laughed. Try me. Mayro. Nope, never been that far south. Yet you still recognize the name. Finn marveled. Do you study maps or something? Brandine seemed to weigh his words carefully, which was strange. He always had a quick answer. I did some traveling with my parents when I was little. Before my dad died. Oh. Finn nodded. He didn't push the topic further. If Brandine seemed relieved or put off, he didn't show it. Instead he sighed. I suppose nobody knows about your mark then. Only the council and my family. A few who remember that far back might remember details. Finn said. But if anyone saw Binnen those first few months, they knew where he came from. I can imagine some used deductive reasoning. Ah yes, Brandine nodded. Binnen. Finn searched his expression. What about him? So you're allowed to be chief? Brandine asked instead, ignoring his question. What do you mean? Well, you recently got cleared by the council, didn't you? Anna doesn't have to worry about that weight resting on her shoulders anymore. Brandine said casually. But you've got the slave mark. The council is okay with that. Finn frowned in confusion. You're implying that they shouldn't be. Brandine shrugged. Some people out there wouldn't dare put a slave on the throne. Finn's inner fire ignited. He raised his chin defiantly. I'm not a slave anymore. No, Brandine smirked. But you're still marked. Some chiefs out there may not like that. Give me an example. Ali the insincere. Finn pursed his lips. Okay. I'm not saying on Burke it's an issue, or that it even should be an issue. But for some cultures out there, some that aren't all that far away, slaves having any kind of freedom or power is forbidden. It's practically taboo. Finn stared down at his desk. Gotcha. I wouldn't worry about it, Brandine said, turning and hanging up a finished hammer. The council and your father are the ones who carry the most weight around here. If they approved you, who cares what other islands think, right? Finn felt unsure. But he still nodded in agreement. Right. The forge filled with silence once more while the boys continued to tinker on their piles of projects. Finn's heart felt like it was being squeezed. He didn't want to take Brandine's words to heart, but he couldn't help but feel a little concerned. He had no idea there were laws out there that prevented former slaves from being any kind of ruler. As far as he knew, Burke didn't hold to those laws. "Relax, Finn." Brandine finally spoke. "Your secret is safe with me." Finn felt his shoulders relax ever so slightly. He'd been working up the courage to ask about that. But he wondered why Brandine spoke first on the matter. "Why?" Brandine shrugged and gave him a smile. "Every man's got his secrets, right? Who am I to let the cat out of the bag?" Finn hummed noncommittally. "Does this mean I get to know one of your secrets? Burden for burden or something, yeah?" Brandine gave him a calculated grin. "Maybe someday." He lifted his tools off the table and marched away, leaving Finn standing alone. He stared after the young man in confusion, wondering what exactly made the guy tick. He seemed to be acting a little differently as of late. He got more irritated with Adriana than usual, though Finn felt like he'd be in the same boat if he was dating a girl like his sister. He didn't think there was anything wrong with her, but he knew he wanted a girl that could keep up with him. He wasn't sure if Adriana was the girl for Brandine. But who was he to voice these concerns? He wasn't. There was nothing wrong with their relationship that he knew about, so these mild concerns were merely stipulation. Besides, young people change a lot in the course of their teenage years. Brandine was almost 19 now. Maybe he was going through a phase. Whatever it was, he himself had plenty of his own issues and attitude problems. It was probably nothing. "All right," Gobber finally emerged from the back door. "Did you two knuckleheads get anything done while I was out?" "Finn, you been daydreaming about Inga again?" "What?" Finn yelled, ignoring Brandine's laugh. He turned and threw a ballpoint hammer at the other teen. "No, we were just not getting enough work done, I see," Gobber said shrewdly. "Look, Brandine's got his entire space cleared out and you've gotten nothing done in the last 10 minutes. Speaking of, did you wash your hands?" Finn asked cheekily. "Oh, why I oughta." Gobber swiped at the haddock boy, who nimbly leapt aside and stood next to Brandine. Okay. Finn chortled. "I'll finish this and lock up." "You do that." Gobber slung an arm around Brandine's shoulders and dragged him to the door. "Come on then, Bruno, let's get some grub." "Bruno. I like the new nickname." "Shut up, Finn." Finn laughed and speedily began working on the rest of his pile of weapons and tools to fix. He'd probably be here another 20 minutes or so. He filled the time with thinking over Brandine's conversation one more time. He resolved to talk with his dad about the slave laws later. He sincerely hoped they weren't breaking any archiplagan laws. Otherwise, Adriana might have to be chief after all. He didn't want to start a civil war for simply being an ex-slave. The idea was silly anyway. Didn't blood trump scars? By blood and birthright, he was the heir. So why did a stupid mark on his right temple make any difference? He didn't belong to them anymore. His father had bought back his freedom. Finn sighed, old pains and memories dredging up from the recesses of his mind. Mayoral, ratry, Latin-speaking commoners, slave traders, filthy living conditions. More than ever he wanted to do something about it. He wished he could jump on his dragon and free every single slave out there. They didn't deserve to be taken from their homes or snatched from the streets. Babies, orphans, young adults, women, able-bodied men, the elderly, it didn't matter. Nobody escaped the clutches of slavery. Even if they somehow attained their freedom, slavery was forever a part of them. It was burned into their skin, rippling with the scars of healed wounds. The mark of a slave never faded. The pain never went away. He knew this more than anyone. The second Benin had passed away, he'd felt alone in a world of free people who couldn't understand his pain. They couldn't comprehend the demons that plagued him some days. Sometimes it would appear in Kale's cruelty to little kids in the street. He'd cringe at the realization that just a few years ago, that had been him. Other times it would appear in his dreams, leaving him gasping for air and checking his skin for stripes, but finding healed scars. More than ever, Finn wanted to do something. He felt powerless against the cold giant that was slavery. He wanted to free people, he wanted to give them the life that he'd been given. He suddenly realized his cheeks were wet. He huffed at himself, wiping his face on his shirt. With a wry smile, he thought maybe if he could one day free every man, woman and child from the deadly grip of slavery, then being an ex-slave himself wasn't so bad. Fellow slaves had to stick together. Just like Benin had helped him from day one, he wanted to help them. One day, he resolved, he would. He had to. Chapter 3, Collapse. Chapter text. Coasting over the bridge leading to the haddock home, Finn gradually steered Zap toward the ground. She landed on her front paws and trotted toward the barn, snuffling against the grass excitedly. "You hungry, big girl?" Finn asked as he slid off the saddle. Zap bounced up and down, her tail pounding against the barn door like a war drum. Okay. Come on then." The teenager hauled half a barrel of cod into her giant bowl, marveling when she eagerly began to snap up the fish. He still couldn't believe how big she'd gotten. She wasn't much bigger than Toothless, but the shockjaw had grown nearly 4.5 feet since he'd first met her. Housebreaking and hours upon hours of training had kept him extremely busy that first winter. Between his job, countless chores for fixing his mistakes, and then taking care of his new baby dragon, Finn had hit the hay every night exhausted for what felt like ages. Finally he'd found a groove that fit his schedule and the rest was history. Finn scratched her scales behind her ears lovingly before walking out of the barn. He heard a bark of laughter behind the door as he pushed his way inside. He blinked in surprise at his father sitting on the kitchen table getting his left bicep wrapped in a white cloth by his wife. "What happened to you?" Yes, Astrid gave her husband a mocking smile. "What happened to you, Hiccup?" Adriana snorted from her reading chair in the living room, sparkling green eyes peeping over her book. Finn looked back at his parents in confusion, barely catching Hiccup's timid glance at Astrid. "Well." Hiccup scratched his neck. "I had a duel." Finn's eyes widened. "What? And you didn't invite me?" "It wasn't on Burke." "Wait." Finn's eyes narrowed. "You dueled Ali?" she insisted. Hiccup threw his arms out. Astrid huffed and pulled his arm taut, making him wince. "Easy there. Gah. Woman. Don't you easy there me," Astrid said as she walloped him on the back of the head. "You've got to stop doing this stuff, it's stupid. How many times do I have to say that when I'm given a belligerent request to duel, which is the only way to ceremoniously open the proceedings, mind you," Hiccup said with flourishing air quotes, making his kids chuckle. "I can't say no." "You can say no or the meetings are off." "Astrid, I can't just call off the meetings that 12 chieftains traveled far and wide to attend." "Did they have to duel as well?" "No." "See?" Astrid nearly yelled. "She's trying to get you killed." "Or worse," Footless Adriana piped, staring at his remaining appendage. Finn crossed his arms. "Seriously Dad, what would happen if they shipped us a dead body with a not so apologetic oops from Ali the sincere?" "Oh wait, no, that's insincere." "Ha. That's what I said," Astrid said, yanking the cloth tight with finality. Hiccup winced and rubbed his arm. "Thanks." The chief slowly stood with a sigh. "I know guys, I get it, but it's a matter of honor and making a good impression. Also, Finn, thank you for that vote of confidence. Shipping my dead body. Thanks. Hey, I'm trying to think logically here." The girls burst into laughter when Hiccup pouted. "Logically? What's that supposed to mean? I've had many successful duels." Finn tried to stifle his guffaws. "No, that's not what I. Oh come on Dad, come back." "Nope." Hiccup said as he marched up the stairs with squared shoulders. "I officially wash my hands of you." "Baby!" Astrid yelled up. Hiccup turned at the top step and stuck his tongue out. "Hurry up though, dinner's almost finished." Finn marched into the kitchen, snatching 4 plates before his mother could even open the cabinet. Within 5 minutes he had the table set as Hiccup tramped back down the stairs in more comfortable trousers and a wool shirt. "Done moping?" Finn smirked. Hiccup pointed at him. "You shush." A loud scratching the door and wailing "Aroo" filled the silence. "Oh man," Finn sighed. "Zappy, go back to bed." Aroo. No. Finn, let her in, Hiccup laughed. I was going to, it's just fun to tease her, but she doesn't know that. Finn put a hand on the door. Zap. You can't run. If you run, I'm putting you back out. Can you be nice? Aroo. Finn sighed. All right. He cracked the door open, but it was instantly shoved in when the shock jaw plowed inside. She instantly ran to Adriana's side in the living room, sniffing her lap and book for treats. Hey you big bad precious. Adriana dropped her book, not even bothering to save her page. She grabbed the dragon's face and shook it back and forth. What's my big drooly face doing, huh? Or you looking for twats? Zap pranced in place, nearly knocking over the coffee table before rolling onto her back to expose her belly. Finn jumped in with his sister to give the dragon an extra good belly rub. Toothless growled in contempt when the bluish-green dragon's tail slapped away his cod. Oh hush, you big galoot. Finn said. You're always getting spoiled. Ow. Dad, control your dragon. The twins looked up when Hiccup didn't respond. Even Zap twisted to look over at her master's dad. They discovered Hiccup and Astrid having a very quiet argument in the kitchen, probably still over the duel because the chief gave an insistent "I'm fine." Finn pursed his lips and looked over at his sister, raising his eyebrows and looked to the door. Should we leave? Adriana shook her head, pointing to the table. Let's sit down. She got up from the floor and grabbed the bubbling pot off the fire and set it on the table, stoically ignoring the adults' rising argument. Stop being so worried about me all the time. You need to stop making stupid decisions. Or rather allowing other people to allow you to make stupid decisions, however you want to look at it. I will do what I have to do, Astrid. You don't need to prove yourself to anybody. The entire archipelago is afraid of you. Not true. Hiccup pointed a finger in her face. I haven't done anything to strike fear in anyone's heart in a decade, so that argument is invalid. So let's just be careless because people need to remember how capable you are. Astrid said snidely, grabbing the water pitcher and walking to the table. Oh my gods, Astrid, it's called tradition. Then delegate it. Astrid exclaimed. Start taking council members with you when you go to these things. Hiccup laughed. Oh yeah, and who do you suggest I pawn off? Snotlout. Horst. Or wait, Gobbus, a seasoned veteran, surely he'd be willing to take my place. A knot began to form between Finn's shoulder blades at the bite in his father's voice. He hated it when his parents fought. It brought back too many bad memories of varying kinds. Adriana didn't seem to be faring much better, pressing her hand into half of her face. Maybe it would be better than losing you, Astrid muttered. Now why would you even say that? Hiccup demanded. You're the last person that needs to die. Nobody even died. Not yet. Adriana finally snapped. Can you guys please stop it? Zap suddenly pressed into Finn's side with a whine. Hiccup looked away, his hand tight against his waist. Astrid calmly sat down in her seat, staring down at her plate. The house rang in deafening silence for a few minutes. Finn dry swallowed, glancing at his dad from the corner of his eye. Finally, his prosthetic squeaked when he moved toward the table. He sat down with a heavy sigh. I'm sorry, guys, Hiccup apologized. We shouldn't fight in front of you. Neither of the kids responded. Finn didn't want to say something to upset him further. Adriana had other ideas, however. Mom's got a point, she looked at him pointedly. I get it's protocol, but what's worse, breaking tradition or potentially dying? Then she turned to their mom before Hiccup could reply, and you're overreacting bit. It's just a cut on his arm. It could be worse, right? Finn didn't know what to expect to happen next, but it wasn't Zap sneaking her dragon-wire lips and tongue pulling Hiccup's plate toward the edge of the table. The chief looked down at her shrewdly. Really? Zap sank to the floor with a dragon-esque rumble, which summoned an easy chuckle out of the family. At long last, the tension seemed to break and everyone began to gather food. Hiccup dropped a fatty piece of meat toward Zap and launched a second toward Toothless across the room, ignoring Astrid's stink eye. Finn could tell most of their ire had simmered. He shot his sister and dragon a thankful smile and began to shovel down his food. As usual, Finn finished first and began to clear away the leftovers. This was something he didn't mind doing anymore. He often helped his mother cook if he got home early enough, but he barely thought about doing household chores like this anymore. When he first started going out of his way to make amends to his family and village, it had been a lot of tiring work. But it proved fruitful in the end, for now he had quite a few good habits under his belt. The others chatted about various things while he scrubbed some dishes. His conversation with Brandine came back to mind and he began to meditate on it once again. He still wasn't sure why the guy would bring it up and discuss all these in-depth laws, just to turn around and say he need not worry about it. "You're awfully quiet, Finn," Hiccup said from the table. "What are you planning?" "Well. Oh, he's not planning anything." Adriana snatched a cookie out of the cookie jar. "When he's planning things, he smirks. You don't have a poker face like Eric does, he'd have an elaborate plan to string up like a wild hog in minutes." "Which is why one does not anger a Larson," Finn said emphatically. "Anyway. I had a weird conversation with Brandine today." "Really?" Astrid asked with interest. "Yeah." Finn paused. He questioningly turned toward his dad, who raised his eyebrows. He saw my slave mark today." The temperature seemed to have dropped as the trio stilled. Finn plowed forward. "It was at the race, the wind blew my hair back so it wasn't anything weird. But he acted strange after that." Adriana frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well, he brought up the fact that I'm cleared to be the official heir again." Finn watched his father's face darken, as if he knew where this was going. "And made mention of certain laws that people hold that forbid a slave from holding any leadership positions." His sister looked devastated. "Really?" Hiccup took a long, deep breath before releasing it. "Yes. There are several villages that hold to that." "We don't," he said firmly, looking his son in the eye. Finn felt reassurance take a hold of his heart. "So you don't need to worry about that." Despite the comfort, Finn had to know more. "But he mentioned Ali." His mother scowled at the mention. "She wouldn't like it." Hiccup turned his cup against the table. "As far as I'm concerned, I do with my village what I will, and last I checked Ali does the same. We lead our people very, very differently, but neither of us can force the other to do something we don't agree with. It just doesn't work that way. Unless she felt so compelled as to go to war over it." Finn muttered. His father looked up at him. "Finn, look at me." Finn slowly raised his eyes. "You are going to be chief one day. Don't you ever doubt that?" Finn nodded nervously. "Could that happen though?" "They'd have to dethrone me and basically change everything from top to bottom," Hiccup said. "And believe you me, that would take a long, long time. Our heritage isn't as steeped in barbarism as some of the surrounding cultures. Personally, I don't think it would be worth the effort just to keep one kid off the throne." "So why did Brandine bring it up then?" "Well, he's from Outcast Island, isn't he?" Astrid asked with a shrug. "Surely he knows Ali the Insincere well enough. I'm sure he's seen the way she operates as a chiefess, or why else would he want to move away so badly? And guys, we've had countless people move to Burke in the last 20 years. Hiccup added. "I couldn't even tell you the number. A lot of people want to live on Burke because we're the most fertile, the least aggressive, we're independent, our chief doesn't make any demands that aren't completely copacetic, and we Burkians fly dragons for a living. What's not to love?" Adriana smirked. "I think his head is swelling." "Just a bit," Astrid agreed. Hey, Hiccup raised his hands. "What can I say? My life's work is a bit satisfying, okay?" Yeah, Astrid poked his arm as she stood. "Adri, get the rest of the dishes for your brother." "Me okay." Finn watched his sister grab the rest of the plates, scrape them into the garbage bucket and drop them in the wash bin. She made some jab about him moving his big butt, so he grudgingly scooted over. He refocused on his parents to see his mother's arms wrapped around Hiccup's chest from behind as she murmured something to him. Hiccup tilted his face toward her too, an apologetic expression on his face. Finn barely heard him say, "Me too." He didn't know much about marriage, and if he knew anything, it was that they weren't perfect. No marriage was. No single young man or woman was perfect, so no couple could seriously be absolute perfection. There were good days and bad days, easy days and trying days. But one day he wanted to have a marriage like they did. Through all of their ups and downs, they still made time for each other. They apologized after arguments, to each other and their kids. It took effort and a lot of humility to apologize to somebody, of all people. Finn understood that. And his parents always made the effort. Even after more than a decade and a half of marriage, they still held hands in public and tried to do meals together whenever they could. Finn wondered if he'd ever know a deep friendship like the one they shared. Astrid brushed her lips against Hiccup's ear as she whispered something, making his eyes widen ever so slightly. He fought a smirk and his tipped head at her, watching her playful grin. "Save it for later," Hiccup murmured before looking forward in time to catch Finn's eye. A crooked smile merged onto Hiccup's face and the teen looked away, a blush overtaking his youthful face. "Hey, that's what you get for eavesdropping." "I ain't dropping no eaves," Finn stood, face still flushed. "Y'all disgust me." "Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet?" "Nope." Finn marched up the stairs. "Still think they're cute, Anna?" "Shut up or take my place, Finnegan." Finn laughed once and then whistled for Zap, listening happily as she bounded up the stairs to join him. He hopped in his bed, grabbed a half-finished wood carving and a dagger from his boot. Zap curled up on the end of his bed as best she could, licking the sole of his boot. He must have stepped in something tasty. He felt comforted by his father's words. If he said he'd be chief one day, regardless what other leaders out there might think, then become chief one day he would. If there was one thing he'd learned to do the last year and a half, it was trust his father. He pulled out his leather strap necklace and brushed a thumb across the necklace's worn edge. Fortis still held a lot of meaning for him, even more meaning since he'd returned home. He was pleasantly surprised how satisfying it felt to look around and help others rather than focus on himself. Of course, he still had a long way to go. He wasn't Benin by any stretch of the imagination. He still needed to learn how to be humble and kind and patient. He needed to learn how to hold his tongue more often. But one day, he resolved, he would be strong just like his best friend, Benin. Just like his father, Hiccup. They were his role models, and more each day he wanted to be just like them. A thin finger poked Hiccup's arm at God's knew what time and he groaned, looking up at his wife through bleary eyes. He felt like Toothless was sitting on his chest. "Hey," Astrid smiled. "It's almost 9. Are you going to your meeting?" Hiccup frowned, rubbing his face. He'd gone to bed around 10:30 with Astrid. So why was he this tired at almost 9? Usually that much sleep left him feeling rejuvenated. Finally, he sighed and sat up. "Yeah. Are you feeling okay?" "Really tired," Hiccup yawned. "Guess that dragon racing wore me out more than I thought." "Probably," Astrid smiled, strapping on his prosthetic. "I'll go on ahead and hold them for another 10 minutes. Hiccup stood, pecking her lips. "Thanks, babe. See you there." The chief quickly got dressed, ignoring the slight pain in his left bicep when he pulled his shirt over his head, and tramped down the stairs. He ducked in and out of the washroom, toothbrush hanging out of his mouth as he poured himself some leftover coffee. It was lukewarm from Astrid making it a while before. He shrugged indifferently. Cold coffee was better than no coffee. Worst case scenario, he'd grab a cup at the Great Hall. Toothless stretched on his stone bed in the living room, giving a wide yawn. He walked over to his rider, dragging his tail. Hiccup replaced his toothbrush in the washroom and scratched his dragon's nose. "Glad to see I'm not the only one sleepy today. Come on, let's get going. We can walk if you want though." Toothless stretched his wings when they walked outside. He gestured to the saddle and Hiccup nodded resolutely. "Flying it is then." The chieftain and his dragon swooped over the village. Hiccup vaguely realized he poured coffee and didn't even touch it. He shrugged indifferently, resolving to grab some at the Great Hall after all. He definitely needed the wake-up call. Landing at the top of the stairs, Hiccup slid down and led the way inside. He grabbed a coffee from the drink stand and joined the rest of the council, who all sat chatting as they waited for his arrival. "Morning sleepyhead." Rough Nut whacked his left arm just under the dual injury. Hiccup jerked back. "Hi Rough." "All right. Manny the Mad asked, only half concerned. Fine. Sorry I'm late, Hiccup said, taking his seat and ignoring Astrid's beady-eyed stare. Mara waved a hand. There's no rush, Hiccup. Why don't you eat something? That's okay, I'll grab something on the way out. Hiccup said, turning to Fish Legs. How is training at the academy coming along? Great. All the new recruits are handling their dragons and responsibilities well. There have been minimal injuries and damages this year, so that's always a plus. Great, Hiccup said. Later I'll stop by so we can talk to them about flight patterns. Flight patterns lessons is tomorrow, Astrid reminded him. Saddle and pen care is today. Hiccup frowned. Oh. He shrugged, only mildly wondering how he'd forgotten that. They had the same schedule every week. Okay then, He rubbed his eyes absently, then chuckled. Sorry, what am I doing today? Does anyone know my schedule? Because I don't. We're supposed to check out the tunnel systems under the village, Snotlout said. Make sure they are still stable. Oh, that's right. You're sure you will be awake enough for that? Horst asked in concern. Hiccup waved a hand. I've been down there 1,000 times. I'll be fine. He was most definitely not fine. Checking the tunnels all morning with Snotlout had been fine, really, except for his inability to think straight. Hiccup didn't know why he was so scatterbrained today. Maybe it had something to do with forgetting to eat breakfast 3 hours before, but he honestly couldn't care less about eating. He wasn't hungry and seemed to be gradually getting more irritable as the day went on. Finally, by quarter after noon, he roped a few men into helping Snotlout with the final tunnels. Toothless swooped out of a tunnel and into the sunlight, momentarily blinding the chief. Hiccup blinked rapidly before regaining his sight. The village went fuzzy for a moment. Hiccup blinked and shook his head. Let's land somewhere, bud. Toothless growled in agreement and flew toward the Great Hall. A minute later Hiccup walked into the spacious building and swiped a cup of water from a passing tray, hoping it wasn't meant for any particular orders. Dad. Hiccup turned in time to see Finn passing by. He blinked at him unsurely. What? Finn frowned. Are you okay? I'm fine. You sure? You look kinda pale. Hiccup scowled. I said. You're fine. Finn smiled. Perfect, really. Anyway, Gobber wanted me to let you know that your sword is sharpened. Do you want to pick it up or me bring it home? Hiccup thought, a headache starting to bloom in his forehead. I don't care, do whatever, buddy. Are you sure you're okay? Hiccup didn't reply, he simply turned and walked away. He didn't know what was wrong with him today. He plopped in the seat beside Fish Legs and muttered something along the lines of "I'm not here." He buried his face in his hands and tried to ignore the pounding behind his eyes, beating in time with his pulse. Cup. Hiccup. What? He finally demanded. Fish Legs looked concerned, which only made him more annoyed. You don't look good. I think you should go home. Stubbornness flared in his chest and he gave his friend a bleak stare. I'm not going anywhere. Hiccup, you're sick or someth. I don't need assistance with anything, Fish Legs. That's not even what I said. Whatever, Legs. I've got stuff to do. Hiccup. The chief walked away without even realizing he'd contradicted himself. He couldn't find Toothless, so he simply marched out the door. Walking down the stairs was proving more difficult than usual. Either he suddenly had 2 feet and 2 prosthetics or the stairs kept changing positions on him. Shaking his head, he forced himself to keep moving, determined to get where he needed to be. Except now he was walking into the village and he didn't actually know where he was going. Hiccup stood in the middle of the street at a complete loss. What was wrong with him? His vision quaked, he felt his skin flush beneath his clothes like he was suddenly overheating. Hiccup grabbed onto a nearby barrel to keep himself steady. That's when the pain flared in his left arm. Something was very wrong. Of course, nobody was in the street to help him out. Their chief could be dying and nobody had chased after him. Why did he have to be so stubborn? He looked around, willing the buildings to hold still for 1 second so he could find The leather shop. The boys. Horst. Grappling with the walls, Hiccup gradually made his way toward the door and fumbled for the doorknob. Eric heard the doorknob jiggle and turned to see the chief walk in. "Hey Hiccup." "Hi Chief." Cliff yelled, stepping in from the back. "Whoa, you don't look so good. You okay?" Hiccup stared at them blankly. "Horst." Eric watched horrified as Hiccup pitched forward, slamming into the nearest table. Horst lunged out of his seat to grab his shoulders and ease him to the ground. "Hiccup. What happened?" Hiccup didn't respond, moaning against the floor and pressing the palms of his hands into his eyes. Horst looked up at Cliff. "Get Mara. Now." Cliff bolted out the door without hesitation, the door nearly flying off its hinges. Horst still held Hiccup's shoulders tightly. "Hiccup, talk to me, what happened?" "Eric, get water." Eric stayed rooted to the spot, watching as the man he'd grown to love writhed on the floor in some kind of pain. He'd already seen horrific images like this in his life. It couldn't happen to Hiccup too, it couldn't. Horst's soft, calm voice broke through the haze. "Eric." The young man flinched and Horst reinforced his request, "Please get some water." Eric nodded and stumbled into the next room, quickly filling a cup with shaking hands. Water splashed on his arms and soaked his shirt sleeves, but he didn't care. He quickly returned and handed the cup to Horst, who brought the cup to the chief's lips. "Hiccup, drink this." A fist grabbed Horst by the shirt and pulled him closer, making Eric back away. Hiccup stared at the older man with intense eyes. "The duel. What about it?" Horst asked. "Something on her blade." "Oh gods," Eric whispered, pulling at his hair. Horst ignored the blonde. "I hope you're wrong, Chief. Drink this." "Stay with me, Eric, he's going to be fine." Just then the door burst back open and a flurry of people ran inside. Mara and Astrid knelt over the chief, instantly fussing and checking his vital signs. Eric could vaguely hear various councilmen demanding questions outside the shop and ordering guards to cover the perimeter and search all the streets. Eric's heart sank. That only meant one thing. One way or another, someone had tried to kill the chief. Fearless Finn nearly tore the Mara's door off its hinges when he arrived. The front room was filled to the brim with important people, but he looked over their faces in search of someone familiar. "Inga." Finn bolted through the crowd when he spotted the girl rush out of a room. He tried to look in before the curtain closed once more. "What happened?" Inga didn't spare him a glance as she filled a syringe with a clear liquid. "He's got an infected wound on his arm." "Infection?" Finn gasped. "But, they were just wrapping his arm up last night, it was fine." "I don't know, Finn. Something about a duel with Ali." "Sorry, he needs this." "What is that?" Finn asked, fear creeping into his voice. Inga finally looked him in the eyes, her gaze sympathetic. "Painkillers." Then she pushed past the curtain and disappeared once more. A hand on his shoulder made the boy jump. Horst stood there, looking grim. "He collapsed in my shop," the tall man said. "It all happened very fast." Finn exhaled shakily. "I just talked to him in the hall and he was acting weird. I kept asking if he was okay, but..." "He'll be okay, Finn." "What if he won't be this time?" Finn asked worriedly. "People always say he always bounces back, but what if he doesn't this time?" He stared the councilman in the eyes unblinkingly. "An infection." "What kind of infection?" "Finn, there's no need to worry," Mara said as she moved swiftly out of the room, quickly washing her hands. The anxious chatter of conversation died down in the room as everyone focused on her words. "We caught it at a good time. I'll have it fixed up in no time and he'll be right as rain by Monday." "No need to worry?" Finn asked sardonically. "It's been a matter of hours since he's gone from completely fine to practically deteriorating and you say he's fine." "Oh, he's not fine, not by a long shot," Mara replied calmly. "To put it simply, your father doesn't get sick, but when he does, his body fights it hard. That's why he's down for the count so quickly. But when we take care of this issue, I promise, he will be fine." Horst stepped forward, resting a hand on Finn's shoulder. "When are you operating?" I'll be ready in 5 minutes. Inga. Mara called. The dark-haired girl appeared within seconds. Get me some cloths, a sharp knife, and these, she instructed, handing the girl a basket. Be ready in 5. Yes, m. Is he awake? Finn asked quietly. Mara finally faced him. Barely. The painkillers make people. Can I see him? Of course. But be quick. Finn instantly pushed his way into the room. His mom sat in a chair close to the bed, brushing his dad's hair off his forehead. Finn ground to a halt, fear seizing his limbs. Sweat dotted Hiccup's face, which was pale. His eyes were on Astrid's, but he looked like he might fall asleep in seconds. His leather armor had been removed so a wool shirt covered his upper body, but the sleeve had been cut away to expose the infected limb. Cotton wraps covered the area, but Finn knew the signs of infection when he saw them. Astrid looked over, her face splotchy. Finn. Come here. Finn gulped, carefully walking forward. Hiccup shifted and weakly grabbed his arm. Hey, it's okay. I'm not dying yet. The teen choked back a laugh, but felt like he might cry at the same time. I sure hope not. I'm not ready to take your place. Hiccup gave him a weak smile. Not true. Besides, Finn said quickly. I couldn't find Anna on my way over, so you're not allowed to go anywhere. Determination, and maybe some irritation, flashed across Hiccup's face. I'm fine. Like I said earlier, you don't look fine. Finn, Hiccup said, reaching out to hold his wife's hand. Just in case. He shook his head crazily. Don't start that. Just in case, Finn, don't trust Ali. I don't trust her anyway, Dad. Finn said quietly. But you're going to be here, so it doesn't matter right now. Hiccup swallowed, closing his eyes like it hurt. If she did this on purpose, it will matter. On purpose? Finn asked. Just then, Mara swished back into the room with Inga and another nurse on her heels. All right, it's time. But Finn began. Hey, Hiccup squeezed his arm. I'll see you in a few hours. Okay. Finn felt his throat constricting, but he nodded firmly. He wished he could hug him one last time, but knew his dad was in too much pain to try that. Astrid leaned down and kissed her husband soundly on the lips before quickly pulling back, releasing his hand and ushering her son out of the room. Finn allowed himself to be marched out, but felt a little dazed when they re-entered the main room. Astrid pulled him into a hug. He'll be fine. I hope so. Finn pulled back, ignoring the hushed whispers around them. He wished the council would go away for once. He just wanted his family to have some closure for once. Even now, being chief didn't always have its perks. You cleaned the wound out last night. Yes, Astrid's face clouded over. It wasn't infected. Must have been in the earliest stages to happen so fast, then Finn murmured. He seemed really disoriented when I saw him last. Disoriented, dizzy, exhaustion, he didn't eat at all today, Astrid counted off on her fingers. She dropped her hands with a sigh. I should have looked at it this morning. If you had, he still might have ended up here. Oh, he would have, Astrid nodded. It just wouldn't have been so crazy. Finn sighed. I hope the whole village isn't freaking out. We'll give them an update when he's out of surgery. Astrid said. But for now. Horst. The man turned from his conversation and walked over. Where's Eric? Horst sighed. I told Cliff to take him home. All right, Astrid turned to Finn. Would you talk to them? See if they're okay. Plus it will keep you occupied for the time being. Finn instantly felt bad for his friends. They saw it happen. Cliff was the first to notice, Horst said. Eric, he froze. Poor kid's already seen enough life and death situations. Seeing Hiccup collapse like that. He'll be okay. I just worry for him, that's why I sent them home together. Finn nodded. Yeah, I'll go talk to them. Thanks. Send me a note if anything happens, Finn insisted before walking to the door. Astrid promised to do so and he quickly left, marching through the streets toward Cliff and Eric's little house. He finally reached the door and knocked. He heard footsteps on the other end before the door swung open, revealing Cliff. Finn. Cliff nearly pulled him inside, instantly peppering him with questions. What happened? Is he okay? They are operating on his arm right now, Finn sighed, plopping on their small couch next to Eric, who sat still and quiet with his good knee drawn up to his chin. It's infected. Infected from what? Finn quickly explained the situation, answering Cliff's questions and constantly glancing over at Eric. He still hadn't said a word or acknowledged his presence. But if the blade had been poisoned, he would have died a while ago. Cliff said quickly. It's been almost a week since the duel. She probably never cleans her weapons then. Not that I'm surprised. Finn frowned. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's still a bad situation for all of us to be in. Yeah. Cliff nodded. Could we handle a war right now? Finn shrugged. I doubt it will come to that, but my dad doesn't really talk about those kinds of resources with me. I trust we'd be okay. Hopefully. Yeah. Their conversation dwindled. Finn looked at Eric once more, bothered at his constant silence. He looked at Cliff questioningly, who shrugged. He hasn't said a word since we got here. Finn carefully reached out and poked Eric's arm. The blonde blinked once and finally turned to look at him, his usually bright eyes dull. You okay? Finn asked softly. Eric faced forward, a muscle in his jaw standing out. He swallowed hard and shifted on the couch. Didn't hear you come in. It's okay. Finn thought carefully, unsure how to proceed. Want to talk about it? Eric shook his head. All right. Okay if I stay though. The Larson boy looked slightly surprised at this question, but he nodded. Finn glanced over at their little pantry. I'm going to make some tea, he said, feeling very awkward at his friend's silence. It was like he was intruding on something, but he wasn't sure what it was. Do you want some? Eric nodded. Finn got out 3 tea bags and a kettle. Oh, I don't need any. Cliff said with a small shake of his head. I have to talk to someone. Okay. Finn replied. When Cliff left the room, Eric shifted slightly in his seat. I'm sorry. I feel selfish freaking out over this, he said in a slightly choked voice. Finn blinked, slightly surprised that he'd spoken. Selfish how? He asked as he placed the full kettle over the fire. He's your dad. But you're the one making tea for me. Eric turned away from him. Sometimes I forget I'm the outsider. Don't be ridiculous. Finn scoffed slightly. You're not an outsider. You're an honorary haddock. You have every right to be distressed about this. Especially after. He caught himself before he continued. After I lost my dad. Eric finished. It's not like reminding me is going to make me cry my eyes out. Yeah. Finn nodded and turned to the tea kettle, wishing he could say something a bit more important. Mara says he'll be fine by Monday. So you don't have to worry about losing him too. Eric looked up at him. You sure? Mara's the best healer we've got. If she says Dad'll be fine, he will be. Finn stated. So please don't panic. And you know I'll panic if you do. We both know what'll happen next. Cliff will panic. Eric said with a tiny smile. Now that's something we want to avoid. Unless we want him monologuing at us for hours on end, yes. Finn chuckled, pouring the tea into mugs and setting one down in front of his friend. Thanks, Finn said Eric, taking a small sip of tea. You're already my second favorite brother. Second favorite? Finn gasped dramatically. You've only got 4. 5, actually. Don't forget Greg. Brothers-in-law count. Eric reminded him. And I have to give Cliff the top spot. He's kind of like a lost puppy, he needs me and I need him. Sounds unhealthy. And shouldn't you put your blood-related brothers first? Gustav's great, but he's also a decade and a half older than me. Nicholas is. Nicholas. Eric sighed. Well, you're my top bro. Finn lightly punched his shoulder. You're a lot more patient with Cliff than I could be. Although if you're counting me, wouldn't Anna be your sister? Ah, no. Eric made a face. Yeah, that doesn't quite work. Where is she, anyway? Thor knows. Finn shrugged. Probably has her tongue down Brandine's throat somewhere. You. Eric stuck his tongue out. Please spare me the mental image. Yeah, will do. Finn took a sip of tea. The boys were quiet for a while. Finn glanced at his friend and internally marveled at how much he'd changed in the last year and a half to be bantering with a boy he'd once described as a pansy. His eyes fell to Eric's prosthetic and the familiar guilt surged within him. Not once had Eric brought up Finn's involvement in the accident that had cost him his foot, but the haddock boy couldn't help but feel horrible about it. Some nights, he could still hear the screaming, not just from Eric but from Gustav and Magnus and Adriana. It was enough to drive him crazy. But despite how awful it had been, the fallout had started a friendship in the boys that felt natural. This was strange because Eric and Finn truly were opposites in almost every way. There was a reason the Larson boy had been so drawn to Adriana. Both were deep thinkers, philosophers, intellectuals. Finn didn't like to sit around thinking about the world, he liked to go out and do things. But he'd come to appreciate Eric's quiet reflection and insightful advice that had saved Finn from many an embarrassing moment. Finn's ability to think on his feet had done the same for Eric. As they drank their tea, it occurred to Finn that Eric would be invaluable if Hiccup died before he had gotten the proper training. Of course, Adriana would be just as helpful for a lot of the same reasons, but Eric had a way of thinking that would counteract Finn's likely stupidity in his early years. A tiny bit of the fear the haddock boy felt concerning the possibility of Hiccup's untimely demise alleviated a bit. As long as he had his friends, Eric as well as Adriana, Cliff, Inga, and Taryn, he'd be fine. Just fine. Cliff had never been so nervous in his entire life. Jogging through the village, his mind racing, he caught sight of a small bush of budding flowers and quickly picked the prettiest one he could find. He paused to admire it for a moment. It truly was a lovely flower. Then he was racing through the village again. He finally caught sight of his intended target outside Mara's. Okay, buddy. Cliff mumbled to himself. You can do this. You've been preparing for this for days. He took a deep breath and strolled over. Morgan Sigmund was standing by herself, her arms crossed to ward against a chilly breeze that had blown through the village seconds before. Cliff took a deep breath and tapped her on the shoulder. Hi, he squeaked when she turned her big, hazel eyes to rest on him. He cleared his throat. Ah, hi, he repeated in a lower register. Hello, she said, looking slightly confused. Hoo boy, this was going to be harder than he thought. The prettiest girl in the world standing before him, staring at him with a beautiful but confused expression. Cliff felt like his throat had swollen to twice its size. So hey, I was wondering, Cliff gulped again and held up the flower. You know, maybe we could go out sometime. Morgan stared at him, mouth slightly ajar. What? Well, I mean, Chief Hiccup is sick and I know he'll be okay and all, but I just got to thinking that life is really short and precious and I shouldn't waste any time, so I thought, hey, what the heck, let's take a chance and ask out the girl I've had a crush on for a super long time. And oh gods, did I say crush? Cliff gasped at the end of his ramble. I meant I think you're cool and all. And yeah. Oh. Morgan took the flower, staring down at it instead of him. Well, I appreciate the thought, I really do. Yeah. Is that good? Cliff's heart was pounding and he suspected that his hands were trembling. Gods, it was hard to be male. All this expectation to ask a girl out, it was exhausting. I'm sorry, Cliff. Morgan handed the flower back to him. I don't want to lead you on. It's not you, it's just. You're not interested. Cliff interrupted. He felt like his heart had dropped into his stomach. I get it. No, really, you're a nice guy, but I just don't think about you that way. Morgan truly looked apologetic, which was a small comfort. Cliff shook his head. He felt like burying his head in the sand on the beach. Forget about it. Cliff, really, I'm sore. No, please. Don't. The Smedley boy walked away before she could say another word. As he walked through the small crowd, he spotted Kale, who seemed to be laughing at something Free had said. Cliff wondered how on earth Kale, the lying, cheating scumbag, had been good enough for Morgan when he, a guy who would never do that to a girl, simply wasn't. But there was one thing Cale had that Cliff didn't. Good looks. Could any girl really be attracted to someone with wild, curly hair? Steel gray eyes that seemed to be a direct contrast to his goofy personality. A tall, gangly body that was still growing. Cliff wasn't the sort of person to worry about his appearance, but he'd been burned by 3 girls now. No first dates. No first kiss. So what was it about him that turned girls off to him? Feeling a surge of frustration, he threw the flower on the ground and watched as a nearby nada trampled it. Maybe he wasn't meant to have a love story after all. The surgery had been a success. Finn had smiled widely when he received the news by way of an overly exuberant terrible terror. If it weren't for the fact that Mara insisted on giving Hiccup a few hours to sleep it off, he would have bade Eric goodbye right away and gone to visit his father. But, once Hiccup was ready for visitors, Finn left the Eric and Cliff's place. Eric wanted to visit Hiccup a bit later, and strolled to the healer's house, his mind racing. Even if Hiccup was fine, Finn would still be chief one day in the future. That meant there was a lot of training to do, meetings to attend, people to meet. It was completely overwhelming, which led him to his next mission. Finn walked through the doors to the healer's house with mild trepidation, giving a wide berth to some women bustling past with arms full bandages. He watched them leave whilst running a nervous hand through his hair, before turning back toward the room where his father lay recovering. A few council members greeted him as they walked by. Gobber clapped him on the back with a grin, but he only gave them half-hearted smiles. He honestly couldn't understand what he was so nervous about. Just a few years ago he had been eager to help out with stuff, yearned for it even. But now he felt almost afraid to bring it up. Finn scowled and shook his head, walking through the door, marching up to his father with more confidence in his step. This was his dad, there was nothing to be worried or anxious about. There was no harm in asking a simple question. All he had to do was spit it out and wait for the response, whatever it might be. And with just that thought, his confidence shriveled and his step faltered. He couldn't seriously expect a positive answer. Sure, he'd been working hard as of late to do better around the house and be kind to people, but this. He couldn't honestly hope for his dad to have forgiven him so much in so little time. It would be a while before his dad let him. Toothless perked from his seat beside Hiccup and bounded over, giving him a gummy smile. Finn patted the dragon's head, his eyes focused on his father. For someone who had been operated on a few hours before, Hiccup looked pretty good. His arm was bandaged and he seemed a bit tired, but aside from that, there really didn't seem to be anything to worry about. Hiccup looked up from the book he was reading and stared at his son in surprise, his eyebrows nearly disappearing into his hairline. Finn. Hi. What's up, Dad? Well, I just got out of surgery. Total success. Now I just have to rest for the next day or two. Finn wanted to slap himself. He had gone to his dad, not the other way around. His inner tangent distracted him from his father's next question, so he shook his head. What? Hiccup smiled in amusement. I asked you what's going on. You look flustered. Flustered? Me? Yes. Shall I name you Finn the Flustered at your naming ceremony? No, Dad, I don't think that would instill fear and respect into my fellow chiefs and adversaries one day. His father chuckled as he placed his book on the nightstand. No, I don't suppose so. Hiccup straightened a bit in the bed. So, what's going on? Yeah. Finn glanced from his father's piercing green gaze to random places around the room, wondering where this sudden fear and trepidation came from. He hadn't been afraid to practically spit the man's face, but now he couldn't ask a simple question. His father's face finally clouded with concern. Finn. The teenager's gaze snapped back to meet his at last and he leaned forward. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be? Because my usually boisterous boy has been standing here for nearly 5 minutes and hasn't said anything intriguing, frightening or downright insane yet. Hiccup smirked. Seriously though, what is it? I'm not going to bite. Did something happen? Do you need help? Finn blurted. His shoulders instantly tensed and he paused, waiting for the hammer to fall. But his father's eyebrows only furrowed in confusion. Help. Yeah. Help, with stuff. You know, hunting for great hall dinners, barn building, need me to wrangle a few monstrous nightmares for you. Hiccup nodded with pursed lips, which only drove the boy to plow through more thoughts. I mean, just because I'm bored and don't have anything to do and figured you probably have a lot to work on, not to mention not having a lot of free time, especially now you're recovering and will have to get back to everything after putting it off for so long. Well, Hiccup patiently interrupted, a corner of his mouth rising at his son's still open mouth. I might have a couple things for you to do. Could use a smart head and strong hands. If you feel up to the challenge. Finn sniffed. I love a good challenge. Hiccup smirked, good. But first, one question, why? Why what? Why do you want to help me? Not that I don't want the help, but this seems sudden. Were you really so scared I wouldn't make it? No. Finn shook his head, some nervousness welling up inside his chest again. He scratched his neck awkwardly. No, I came myself. Honestly I was a little bored. But then I thought about how you and Mom have so much to do and not a lot of time to do all of it. But. Finn shrugged. I don't know, I guess I figured if I'm going to make you proud one day then I'd best get started. Not wait around for someone to bring the jobs to me. So, yeah. Hiccup watched him with a blank face for a few quiet moments, arms still crossed. Finn felt like he was being weighed or studied. Okay. Hiccup finally replied in a soft voice. I think you're ready for a little responsibility then. You're sure? Finn asked. Because you can say no, gods know I don't deserve it. Hiccup raised an eyebrow. Just coming to me to ask what you could do to help us out, without prior asking, makes me proud and tells me you're more ready than you ever were. I love you, Finn, and I want you to succeed. I can only tell you're succeeding by the good things you do, and I'd say you're headed in the right direction. A smile split Finn's face. Yeah. Yeah. Hiccup smiled proudly at his son. I think it's time to start training you in the ways of chiefing. Which, believe me, is a lot less exciting than it sounds. Finn shrugged. I'm about as ready as I'll ever be. Hiccup smirked. Good. First, why don't you check in with Snotlout and Gobber, see if there are any pressing matters you could help with. I'm sure they've got a growing list. Worst comes to worst, see Fish Legs. All right. One more thing, Hiccup said before he could leave the room. How are Cliff and Eric? Finn winced. I don't know about Cliff. He said he had to talk to someone before I could talk to him. And Eric? He's okay now. He was really quiet the last few hours. Made him some tea. Hiccup sighed. Poor kid. It's okay, Finn attempted to sound encouraging. Once he sees how good you look, he'll be okay. I know. I just feel bad. Finn shrugged. It is what it is, I guess. What about Ali? Are you going to bring it up? Hiccup shook his head. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Discuss it with the council once I'm back on my feet. Foot. Be quiet. Hiccup could hide the smile when Finn snickered. All right, get out of here. Okay, see ya. Finn turned out of the room and quickly sought out Snotlout. The man looked relieved to have some assistance given the day's impromptu emergency. Finn's heart swelled in pride at the list of jobs to do, thankful his father trusted him so much to give him summer keeping duties. And soon he'd start getting legitimate lessons. This is what he was meant to do someday. To take his father's place was the single most important thing he'd ever do in his life. And he couldn't wait to get started. Chapter 4, Flying Sparks. Chapter text. Oh, the things she did for other people. It wasn't enough that she felt bloated and crampy from the moment she'd woken up that morning. Her boyfriend still wanted to keep their date on its normal schedule. Naturally. And no one could say no to Brandine's deep blue eyes. It was a while before the older boy finally let her go, but Adriana took the incredibly uncomfortable flight back to her home, hoping only to curl up with something hot on her abdomen and take a nap. She hated this time of the month. However, she was surprised to find her brother running out of the house the moment it came into view. Wondering what it was he wanted, and hoping it wasn't something that would cause her to exert any physical effort, she landed and dismounted. "Where have you been?" Finn demanded the second her feet touched the ground. Any other day, Adriana wouldn't have felt snippy. Today, however, was a different story. "Why does it matter? Do you need to know my location every second of the day?" "No, Finn took a deep breath, which was something he'd taken to doing when he caught himself losing his temper. "Anna, Dad collapsed today." Adriana felt like her heart had been dumped in a bucket of freezing water. "What?" "He's okay," Finn assured her. "Stable. He'll be fine by Monday, Mara says." "I have to go see him." Adriana made a move to mount her dragon, but Finn grabbed her elbow. "No, he's fine. Mara says he needs rest. She won't let you in." "I don't care," Adriana cried, her heart racing. "I wasn't there and I should have been, and I want to say I'm sore." "Anna, seriously," Finn growled. "He's fine. Don't bug him. Just go in and take a rest. You look really tired." Adriana huffed but finally put her feet on the ground again. Lily looked at her concernedly and she gave her dragon a half-hearted smile. "Go ahead to your pen, Lily," she whispered to the monstrous nightmare, giving her a kiss on the snout. "Be in soon, okay?" Once Lily had waddled away, it seemed that no amount of heavy breathing could calm Finn down. "We looked for you all day," he snapped at her as they walked to the house. "You were gone. Anna, Dad was asking for you. You cannot just disappear like that." "I'm sorry I disappeared, okay?" Adriana's chest was tight. She hated the thought of her dad waiting to see her and her not showing up. "Really? I am. Brandine just wanted some time together since it's almost his birthday. If that tool dragged you all over the archipelago. Since when are you so protective?" Finn seemed temporarily speechless and, if possible, slightly embarrassed. I'm not protective, I'm just concerned." "Well, I make my own decisions," Adriana snipped. "And I don't need you, Finn. You know what? Fine. Forgive me for caring about our dad." Finn held up his hands in mock surrender. "I'll just let you be all hormonal in peace." Adriana felt heat rising to her face, whether from annoyance at her brother's tone or the fact that he obviously knew tortures her body was putting her through she didn't know. Remembering that she'd left Lily still saddled up in her pen, she stomped back out the door. She dearly wanted to apologize to her dad. But at the same time, she trusted Finn's word that he was all right. So she went into the pen to tend to her dragon, sending a quick prayer that Hiccup would be okay and thanking the gods for a good day out with her boyfriend. Monday came at last, and with it came Hiccup's freedom from Mara's house. Several villagers had been to visit him when he arrived at home, but Cliff and Eric weren't among them. Cliff because he had to work all day and Eric because he had caught a bug and was stuck at home until it passed. Cliff liked finishing work at the end of a long day. It wasn't so much that he disliked his work, but it was hard to release his excess energy while cooped up in a leather shop all day. By the time Horst bade him good night, the Smedley boy felt like he might explode. And with Eric out for the count with the stomach flu, there was a lot more work and thus, a lot more stress on poor Cliff's attention span. Of course, it was better to go to work just fine than to listen to Eric's occasional retching at home. Nothing ruined a good day more than vomiting his guts out. For this reason, Cliff was going to sleep at his parents' house until Eric recovered. And, for whatever reason, he simply didn't feel like paying Hiccup a visit today. Perhaps tomorrow when he was feeling better himself. As the boy walked home, looking forward to a home-cooked meal from his mother, he played what had happened with Morgan over in his head once more. Why didn't she think of him in that way? Was it because he had grown so much that he could use Adriana as an armrest? The wild curls he couldn't tame. His constant chatter. What was it that girls found so unattractive? These thoughts kept coming back in a nasty circle that just made him dizzy and more depressed. Shoving his hands in his pockets, he stared at his overly large feet as he walked. Suddenly, he saw a second pair of feet in front of him. He stopped just short of stepping on them and looked up into the light blue eyes of Donna Sanders. Cliff and Donna didn't know each other very well. The girl had a reputation for her promiscuity, most notably being caught doing gods knew what to Kale, and Cliff certainly didn't want to know. She also mercilessly mocked Adriana and Inga whenever the opportunity arose. Needless to say, Cliff wasn't too keen on the girl, and by the looks of things, she didn't much like him either. "Cliff's medley," she said with a smile that made Cliff's sense of unease skyrocket. "You know, you and I never talk. Isn't that a shame?" Completely bewildered, Cliff stared at her in silence for a few tense seconds before responding. I guess. Why, did you want to talk?" Dana's small hand suddenly grasped Cliff's wrist far more tightly than he was expecting from a girl who stood an inch shorter than Adriana. Before he could protest, she yanked him into an alley away from the prying eyes of the villagers. Cliff tripped over his feet trying to keep up with her, a detail he was surprised she didn't point out. "So I saw you and Morgan the other day," Dana said in response to his unasked question. "Shame. You two would have worked if you had more experience." "What?" Cliff asked, his mouth agape. This was weird. Well, obviously Morgan is looking for a guy who knows how to please her. Cliff became suddenly aware of Dana's hands on his chest. He squirmed away from her touch, feeling extremely uncomfortable as she continued talking. "It's not your fault. No girl has been willing to give you the chance to practice." Her hands had reached his stomach and were still moving downward. I'm not feeling comfortable with this," Cliff whimpered, his heart pounding in his ears. "Dana, I just want to." "Come on, Cliff, you're a guy." Dana let out a seductive laugh. "All guys want it. Just let me lead. We don't even know each other." Cliff turned his hip sideways and tried to wriggle out from his awkward position wedged between Dana and the wall behind him. His body wasn't cooperating. Frozen in shock, he continued to stare at her with wide eyes. Look, I'm good, thanks. I just thought I'd do you a favor," Dana whispered, getting on tiptoe so she could breathe in his ear. "You know, so you'll know what it's like to be with a woman. Since no one will have you." Before Cliff could respond, he was silenced by her lips ferociously moving against his. His heart left his chest to pound in his ears, his body frozen in horror. Never in 100 years would he ever have thought he would share his first kiss with Dana Sanders. But this could hardly be called a kiss. Taking advantage of his shock, Dana thrust her tongue through his parted lips. Feeling returned to his body when he felt Dana's fingers caress a part of his body he definitely didn't want her touching. He finally gripped her shoulders and pushed her backward. "No, I don't want." "Oh come on, Cliff. Do you want to be a man or not?" Dana sounded irritated, a far cry from how she'd sounded a few seconds ago. "Not like this." Cliff breathed, trying to slow his heart rate. "I don't want." "Shut up." Dana interrupted before slamming him against the wall again and fingering his belt. "This is the only chance you'll ever get," she breathed between kisses. "Enjoy it." "Stop." Cliff wailed, shoving her back again. "Just stop." Dana growled, finally obeying his desperate command. "Fine. I was just trying to do something nice." She abruptly turned from him and stomped away. Just when Cliff thought he might be able to move again, she turned her head to shout, "You can throw yourself at any girl from now to Ragnarok and none of them will ever have you. You might as well just die a virgin." Cliff didn't realize he was holding his breath until the pressure built up too much in his chest. He exhaled heavily and gasped a few times, still reeling over what had just happened. It was like a cold fist had closed over his heart. He knew Dana was truly the worst sort of person to be telling him such things, but he couldn't help but feel hopeless. She had said exactly the words he himself had dared not say aloud lest they become true. It wasn't as if Cliff felt like he needed to have sex to feel complete. He knew there were other, more important, things to focus on in life. But to die alone, with no one to love him. He'd feared that plenty of times. He was happy for Finn when he saw the Haddock boy bantering with Inga. He loved to see them together. And, of course, he lived for the moments Eric and Adriana seemed to pick up on the obvious sparks flying between them. They had it together. They had someone to love. And Cliff didn't. Would sex with Dana have been the only contact he'd ever have with a woman? It was beginning to seem that way. Everyone around him was partnering up. But he felt lost, alone. No girl so much as looked at him that way. And maybe no girl ever would. Cliff leaned forward slightly, trying to get rid of the sensation of Dana caressing his front. He felt violated by her wandering hands. It was a moment of stunned silence before he noticed tears silently dripping down his cheeks. Feeling embarrassed, he wiped his face and walked home as quickly as he could, his eyes fixed on the ground. Burke had never felt like such a terrifying place. Inga marched through the woods at a steady pace. She inhaled a deep breath of air, finding she enjoyed the solace. Mara had insisted she take the rest of the day off. Had she argued? Absolutely, as in of course. She never wanted to stop working. She found it distracted her from the stupidity of life's issues, mainly petty teenage drama and her own physical problems. Mara called it a seizure. They still weren't sure exactly what it was or what caused each episode. They seemed to be very sporadic. Fortunately, the last one had occurred almost a year ago. A few small seizures had come and gone here and there, but she was beginning to hope that they were truly gone. She didn't want to get her hopes up. A lot of her pent-up stress resided in that very fact that, no matter the time of day or night, no matter what she could be doing, her body might uncontrollably seize at any moment. Inga huffed in annoyance, shoving her bangs off her forehead in agitation. She hated feeling like this. None of her friends seemed to have this problem. The few people with strange or chronic health problems were elderly. Working at the healer's hut herself, she knew many of the village's varying needs. But no one had these seizures like she did. No 13-year-old should have to deal with these things, she thought bitterly. Of course, she kept busy. She occupied herself at work as much as allowed, and thoughts strayed to him a little more often than was desired. She told herself day in and day out how ridiculous it was, to like a boy at all, let alone that boy. Not that she liked him. He'd certainly never give her a second glance anyway. No boy would once he found out about her physical ailments. It was just like Dana had said a while ago, nobody wants a girl who can't control her own body. Of course, Inga knew she didn't need a boy to be happy. She was still pretty young. There would be plenty of time for that later, assuming anyone wanted her. Oftentimes Inga sat with a big group of people of varying ages, which meant he was almost always present, or at least nearby. She could always hear him laughing or goofing off. In reality, she hated his guts. From Alton Brand to Mara to Eric Larson, everyone always thought it appropriate to tease her about him. If she didn't know any better, she'd think their parents had drawn up a contract upon her birth and they were secretly engaged for all the chit-chat going around. It's not like they ever hung out. He was way out of her league, always busy and totally attractive. But he was also a big, stupid beast of a boy who was proud and always teased her when he did take notice of her existence. Inga frowned, pulling on her long hair. She couldn't believe this. She wasted so much time brooding over all these stupid, trivial things. She hated the guy anyway. What did she care? One day he'd find a nice girl and settle down, probably have a few kids, and she'd still be concocting medicines in the back of the healer hut. Shoving a bush out of the way, Inga carefully picked her way through a thick grove of trees. She stepped over a decently sized rock and slam. Inga screamed and backed into a tree trunk, staring up in horror at the battle axe protruding from the trunk she'd just been standing beside. She turned toward the clearing ready to shout at her assailant, anger bubbling in her chest. Her eyes widened in complete shock instead. Speak of the devil. Fearless Finn. The haddock boy stood there with wide blue eyes and teeth clenched in an unspoken "oh my gods, I could have killed you" expression. But it wasn't his mere presence that had rendered her speechless. His bare arms and chest did that. Having 2 little brothers and a head honcho for a father, not to mention all the boys in the village and working at the healers, of course she'd seen a shirtless boy before. But she'd never seen Finn shirtless. From toned chest to strong core muscles, broad shoulders to cinched waist, the poor girl could only stand and stare in surprised shock. That's when she noticed his mouth moving as he moved closer. Inga flushed, tearing her eyes from his sweaty, well-muscled skin. Sorry, I didn't hear you coming. Are you okay? Finn carefully helped her to her feet as if she were fragile. A flare of anger ignited in her chest at the idea, but it was completely snuffed out at the sudden front row view of fearless Finn's muscled form. She knew he was strong, he always had been after all. But, dang. She hadn't known he looked like this under a shirt. G. What? Inga snapped, looking up to see his eyes searching hers worriedly. Finn repeated himself slowly. Are you okay? Her heart rate doubled. He'd never sounded so concerned for her before. Legitimate fear was in his eyes, perhaps due to the accident with Eric. He'd become a lot more sensitive to injuries the last year and a half. And here he was, standing in front of her in all his shirtless, well-muscled glory, and she couldn't think of anything to say. Finally, she jerked away from him and closed her eyes, trying to focus on something, anything, other than his affinity for hot qualities. Her ire instantly returned. She was standing here gaping at the stupid when she should be tearing his arms off, tying him up like the bull he was, and dragging him into the village for his incompetence. You're such an idiot, you know that. Finn blinked. Then a rogue smirk eased its way onto his face, effectively turning her insides to jelly. And she's back. Welcome to the land of the live. Inga, being a bit shorter than him, the big buffoon, threw her fist back and socked him right in his wide-open diaphragm. Finn gasped and doubled over. That's for not paying attention to where you're throwing your weapons. Inga cried, shaking out her hand. If her father hadn't taught her how to punch ages ago, she might have broken her hand on those herbs. Finn laughed halfway through his wheezing. Dang girl, you've got a fist. And that's another thing. Inga screeched. Why are you so hot? Inga shook her head once to clear it. Shirtless. It's almost 70 degrees out here, Finn said, standing and yanking his axe out of the tree. Inga watched in fascination when his bicep and shoulder muscles momentarily tightened. What's your excuse? Inga blinked, glancing down at her sweater tied around her waist. She shrugged. All right, so I forgot you outside was hot. Is hot. Ah gods. Finn smirked and breathed an easy laugh. He turned and marched toward a stash of stuff nearby. Inga fought the blush on her face. Finn wasn't stupid and she'd almost just slipped up. He was not allowed to tease her like this. This was ridiculous. Donning a scowl, Inga marched after him and ignored his curious look. This is your crap. Finn snorted. Yes, thank you. That is indeed my crap. It stinks. Sorry, it's kind of workout gear, it's not meant to smell good. Finn snatched a shirt off the ground and yanked it over his head. Unfortunately for her, it was a baggy, open-throated tunic. She internally groaned, wishing she could smash his brains in now for being so beautifully cruel. Well, maybe you should wash it. If you hadn't noticed, we're a little walk away from my house. That would take half the day. Inga rolled her eyes. Where's Zap? Workout zone, Finn said, waggling a finger around them. Dragons don't do weapons, remember. Is the sky blue, too? Inga smirked. Not always. I suppose you're not always the sharpest knife in the drawer either then. Ouch, Finn snickered, buckling a belt around his waist. He grabbed a satchel and slung it over his shoulder. What are you doing out here, anyway? Inga shrugged. Mara booted me. Told me to take the rest of the day off. Ha, sounds nice, Finn nodded, marching backwards toward the trees. Wish all of our employers were so gracious. Speaking of, I left something at work, so it was nice to see you. I'm sorry I almost, almost killed you. Ah. He paused. You won't, tell your dad about that, will you? Inga smirked. If anyone could scare fearless Finn, her daddy could. For now. Oh, how gracious of you, Finn sighed. Welp, I'll check you later. The teenager disappeared through the trees, leaving the Jorgensen girl standing alone in the clearing with a heap of smelly armor and weapons. She really didn't want to spend another minute with the boy. She couldn't stand that infernal smirk and deep voice that dripped with sarcasm with nearly every comment. But even more, she didn't want to be alone in the woods. And if her parents found out, they'd both get it. She glared at the pile of armor before stomping her foot once and running after him. Inga caught up with him quickly. Hey. Finn glanced over his shoulder at her. You can't just leave me alone in the woods. Finn snorted. You were alone in the woods long before I showed up. I showed up. Don't act like the hero here. Smiling, Finn gave her a look. Oh, so you don't need me to take you home. I don't want you to take me home. Inga cried indignantly. You said not to leave you alone in the woods. To which I said. That makes you the damsel in distress in this story, sweetheart. Finn interrupted unabashedly. Inga ground to a halt. What was that now? Which part? Finn turned and walked backwards, a grin on his face. The damsel in the distress or sweetheart? Inga stamped her foot with an indignant squeal. Well, that's attractive. Hey. Come here so I can knock your lights out. Not gonna happen. Finn froze in place suddenly, which was lost on Inga. Oh, it's happening, right here, right. Finn suddenly spun and pushed her behind a large boulder. Off in miles per hour. Inga panicked slightly when he closed his hand over her mouth. Sure. Finn whispered from behind her. Inga, hold still. Look. Inga stilled, looking in the direction his other hand pointed. At first she didn't know what he was pointing at. All she saw were tree trunks and a big white and orange curtain. Wait. Inga gasped when the large white wing moved and a massive dragon walked into view on its haunches. She pushed back into Finn's chest when the creature moved past, stopping only a few times to sniff the air. It raised its head and roared once, the surrounding rocks and tree branches vibrating slightly. It's okay, Finn whispered faintly, carefully removing his hand from her mouth. In truth, Inga wasn't afraid. But the thing was huge and she'd never seen one before. Growing up around dragons taught her to stay on her toes, but if it hadn't been for Finn's instincts and survival skills, she might be dinner right now with all her previous squawking. What is it? Inga asked, leaning forward. Typhumarang, Finn murmured. They used to live here when our parents were teens. Dad trained one once. This thing. Inga whispered hoarsely. Finn's mouth tilted in another smirk. Dragon Conqueror, remember? No kidding. To be fair, it was a baby. Inga turned a glare at him, then froze. Finn loomed just over her shoulder, his face mere inches from hers. This close, she could see the reddish stubble on his face and could practically count the freckles dotting his cheeks. Finn's eyes met hers and stayed, unblinking. Inga couldn't breathe. She'd never been in this situation before. What should she do? Turn away? Wait for him to move away first. The longer he stared at her, the more awkward she felt. However, Inga saw him swallow hard just before he ducked his head and stepped out from behind her. It's gone, Finn said calmly. We should get back to the village past the creek though. We don't want to upset him. Why? Inga nodded once. She walked past Finn resolutely, unwilling to look in his big blue eyes again. She felt some comfort having him at her back though, especially with a monstrous dragon around somewhere. If anyone could protect her, it was Finn. A surge of annoyance struck her heart again. She shouldn't need protection. She wanted to protect herself, by herself. But everyone on the island knew the rules concerning Inga Jorgensen, keep an eye on her. She didn't want people to worry about her. She just wanted to be a kid with no worries. But life didn't work that way. All right, she trotted alongside the older boy, keeping in pace with him quite well considering their height difference. I'll let you walk me back the village if you're a good boy. Finn grinned at her. You okay, whatever you say, beauty. Don't call me that. Finn snickered. All right. Your wish is my command. I wish you'd shut up. Oh, come now. Finn stuck out his lower lip in an aggravatingly adorable way. You wouldn't want to miss out on all my life's wisdom, would you? What part of shut up don't you understand? Inga smirked. Oh fine. I'll shut up. Finn mimed, zipping his lips. Once they got to the village, Inga nodded once to him before scampering off. Finn smirked at her retreating back. That girl was going to drive him crazy one day and he found that he rather liked it. As he walked past the forge, he noticed a light on. This was strange since Gobber usually was home at this time. So was Brandine still there? When he walked up to the door, he heard the older boy's voice. "Don't you think I've tried?" he was saying in a frustrated tone. "It's not as easy as it looks." Finn pushed open the door. "Come on, Gobber, give the guy a BR." Brandine whipped around when Finn had walked in, but, to Finn's utter confusion, Gobber wasn't there. In fact, no one was there. "You all right, man?" Finn asked concernedly. "Who are you talking to?" "Oh, so I can't talk to myself without the third degree?" Brandine snapped. "Just trying to think out loud." "That's not what it sounded like." Finn furrowed his brow. "Well, that's what it was, so get lost." Brandine shouted, grabbing his things and stomping out of the forge. Finn watched him go in silence. Something about Brandine's behavior was alarmingly familiar. He remembered stomping off to deal with his anger by himself. But what did Brandine have to be angry about? And was he as far gone as Finn had been back then? The next morning, Adriana pounded down the stairs, still attempting to pin her hair up. Little Ava was a hair puller, so she made it a habit not to make her long blonde hair accessible for the toddler. The Haddock girl simply adored Ava, but she didn't much like trying to untangle sticky fingers from her braid. According to Astrid, Adriana used to yank on handfuls of her mother's hair and Stoic's beard when she was little. Maybe this was a sort of universal retribution. By the time Adriana was ready to get to work, everyone was usually out of the house. The girl loved being able to set her own work schedule and sleep in when she wanted. The other babysitter on Burke, a girl in her 20s named Ellie, was a morning person, which meant the girls could meet up once a week and set up who would do which job depending on the time of the job and the preference and schedule of each girl in question. This meant Ellie got to finish up in the early afternoon and Adriana could go until late at night and sleep all morning. It was perfect, really. Well, perfect except for one thing. Adriana jumped when a loud knocking suddenly rang through the house. Putting her last pins in place, she rushed over to the door and opened it up. Then she stopped and stared. Someone was standing there, a large bouquet of flowers blocking his face. Adriana giggled when he pulled the flowers down to reveal the light brown hair and dark blue eyes of her very handsome boyfriend. "Hey, babe," he said smoothly, making her knees go a bit weak. "Hi," she breathed. "Gods, they're beautiful. What's the occasion?" "No occasion." Brandine leaned in and kissed her chastely on the lips. "Nothing wrong with showering my girl in affection." "Oh." Adriana kissed him again, this time more passionately. "You're the best. Nothing is too good for my beautiful Adriana." Brandine grinned at her for a moment before handing her the flowers. "I wish I could stay, but I can't. Lunch is almost over and it took me forever to pick all these. I hope they make you as happy as you make me." "You can't stay?" Adriana asked, feeling a wave of disappointment. "We can meet up this evening," Brandine offered. "I'm with Ava until 11. "Ah. Okay. Well, definitely sometime this week." Brandine turned to walk away when he stopped in his tracks for a moment. He then turned around. "You know, I do have a little something more for you. Do you think you can meet me at the barn we kissed in during the next dragon race?" "But that's in a week." Adriana sighed. "We can't meet sooner. I'm a busy guy. Aside from dinners, I'm pretty swamped. Just meet me there, Nani. You won't regret it." Brandine blew her a kiss before walking down the hill to the village. Adriana's heart fluttered as she shut the door. Flowers from Brandine and a surprise date. She might as well have been in Valhalla. Since when was he so affectionate? It didn't take long for her to place the flowers in water and finish getting ready to leave. She didn't have to be at the Thorstons until 2, so she had a bit of time to kill until then. And she knew exactly how to spend it. Her leather shop boys always had lunch at exactly noon. And when she had the time, that was her favorite place to be at that time. So she walked down the hill and into the village, expecting to see Eric and Cliff kidding around and cracking jokes about each other. She was surprised when she got there and saw no one sitting outside the shop. That was strange. She pushed open the shop door and walked inside. Saddles hung on the far wall, the most extravagant ones on display. She was momentarily distracted by a lovely saddle with purple beads woven through it. Eric's work, she could tell, when she heard a small thump inside the back room where her boys usually worked. She went back to investigate. Cliff was sitting by himself, his eyes focused on his poorly constructed lunch on the table. This was very odd. Cliff ate by himself. Sure, it would be totally normal if it were Eric, but Cliff was not the sort of guy who liked to eat in a small office away from other people. Hey! Adriana ventured, making Cliff jump. Oh! Hey! Didn't see you there. He attempted to smile and failed. Sorry for startling you. What's up? Why aren't you regaling Eric on your tales of past adventures or plans to build a house out of nothing but licorice? I never planned to build a house out of licorice. Cliff said almost indignantly. Not that it's a bad idea. Actually, it's pretty good. Wish I'd thought of it. What's up? Adriana sat down in Eric's chair. Is Eric still sick? Yeah. Cliff replied. I mean, he'll be fine. But he says he's still feeling bleh. Is that why you're upset? Who said I was upset? Cliff asked almost accusingly. No one. Adriana replied quickly. But you're not out looking for someone to talk to. That's a red flag right there. I used to be really quiet. Cliff huffed. I can't be really quiet again. Not in my experience, no. Adriana smiled. You talk a mile a minute. Cliff, seriously, what's wrong? Cliff sighed deeply and turned back to his lunch. Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing. You wouldn't understand. He growled in a surprisingly harsh tone. I mean, of all people, you really wouldn't understand. Try me. Adriana leaned in slightly. I'm a good listener. Cliff shook his head. Well, I'm not leaving until you tell me. And you're going to annoy me as much as I'd annoy you if the roles were switched, is that it? Cliff shook his head and turned to her. Am I handsome? Adriana was taken aback. This was not what she'd expected to hear. Yeah. That's what I thought. Cliff turned back to his food. I'm just No, it's a surprise you even asked that. Adriana scooted her chair forward. She hated seeing her friend this down. Of course you're handsome. You're just saying that to make me feel better. Because you're really sweet. Cliff gave her a half smile. But you know I'm not. Where's this coming from? Adriana asked. Please, just talk to me. I have crushes all the time. Cliff said slowly. But girls don't like me. And yesterday, I had a conversation. With a girl. And she said none would. Like me, you know. What? Adriana wasn't sure if he was joking, but the idea was simply ridiculous. What girls is she talking about? Cliff shook his head, apparently overwhelmed with emotion. Adriana scooted her chair forward so she could hug him from the side. The Smedley boy seemed to appreciate her affection and put his head atop hers. I'm sorry, he whimpered. I've just been thinking about it. And I know I'm annoying. And I talk too much. I know you guys roll your eyes at me and smirk at each other behind my back. And I don't care when you do it because I know I'm a handful, he sniffed loudly. So why would any girl love me like that when there are people out there like, you know, Finn, who is really good looking, and Eric, who is really smart? I'm neither of those things. Cliff, hey. Adriana pulled back her head so she could look at him. I love you. Maybe not in that way. But you're just talking about the things that make you you. You chatter all the time, so do I. And I'm not good looking. Gods, look at my mom. She's so tall and beautiful and I'm so short and awkward. Cliff breathed a laugh. And you have two guys completely in love with you. One guy. Oh come on, Anna. Cliff spoke in an uncharacteristically harsh tone as he broke away from her. If you haven't seen how Eric looks at you, if you haven't noticed him watching you from the leather shop as you walk around town, if you haven't caught him blushing when he realizes he's been staring at you when you're not looking, you're obviously not paying attention. Adriana wanted to say something but there didn't seem to be any words. What? What girl looks at me like that? Cliff asked in the same harsh tone. Look at me. I'm an overlarge twig with crazy hair and scary eyes and a personality so annoying that girls actually feel sorry for me for being so undesirable. I can't really help you," Adriana finally exclaimed. Cliff went silent, slightly surprised. "I wish I could. But I can't. It's not that you're not handsome or desirable. But it's not up to me to make other girls feel that way. Maybe you just haven't found her yet." "No." Cliff sighed. "Maybe she doesn't exist." "Cliff, come on. Yeah, you can't imagine it. Him not being out there for you. Because of course you and Eric, or heck, I'll be generous, you and Brandine will end up together." Cliff ranted. "Tell me where she is, Anna. Tell me where the girl of my dreams is. Because no girl on Burke wants this. And frankly, I don't blame them." "Oh Cliff, now listen to me, you big goofball," Adriana said in a similarly sharp voice. "I don't want to hear that talk. Yes, you're single now. But that's okay. You don't go looking for the right person will find you when you're out doing things you like. You don't think I met either Brandine or Eric by moping around in the back room of the leather shop all day, do you?" Cliff shook his head. "No, I was traumatized and at the healers when I met Eric, and I almost drowned after I met Brandine. Sometimes bad things happen so better things can follow. So come on, Cliff. You know better than that. You just need a little more time." Cliff sniffed. "I don't know if time is going to fix this, Anna." Adriana nudged his shoulder. "Yeah it is. Just be you." She got out a handkerchief and handed it to him. "Now where's that goofy smile we all love?" Cliff gave her a withering gaze. "Well, I'm not leaving without it. Stubborn haddock." Cliff gave her a half smile. "Okay, fair enough. And there's my big goofball." Adriana breathed a laugh. "Handsome goofball too." "No, you're just saying that." Cliff's smile widened but he shook his head. "But I'm afraid it's only going to be two guys chasing you, sis." "As it should be." Adriana nodded. "Love you, bro." "Right back at ya." Cliff stood up and finally gave her a genuine smile. Come here." Adriana stood up and the two hugged each other rather tightly. Cliff loved Adriana hugs. She really was like the sister he never had. And he truly did want to see her and Eric live happily ever after together. But even after what she'd said, he still couldn't help but wonder if there truly was a happily ever after for him. Dana Sanders didn't like being away from people. This was why she didn't like walking aimlessly through the woods. But when she had a reason to, she didn't mind in the slightest. She'd never met anyone quite like him. He was the sort of person you only met once in a lifetime. And Dana felt lucky to have him wrapped around her little finger. He was so smart, he was practically a genius, and his ideas were fascinating. He was a passionate, dominant lover that made her weak at the knees no man ever could before. Dana didn't think she was the type to desire a commitment, not when there were so many men out there to have fun with, but if anyone could come close to making her commit, it was him. There was, of course, a snag. They could only be together once a week because of his schedule. And because of his sniveling brat of a girlfriend. But they made the best of the time they had. When she finally saw him, she breathed a sigh of relief. So he'd managed to shake that little whore he was dating. Good. "Hey you," Dana said, walking up and putting her arms around his waist. Gods, he was sexy. "Long time, no see." Brandine Anderson grinned cheekily at her. "You saw me last week." "Yeah, but once a week is not enough." Dana sighed. "Aren't you going to do something about her?" "I told you, I'm working on it." Brandine grumbled. "And we're not here to talk about her." "Oh, I just wanted to know where you've been." Dana moved her hands under his shirt and up his bare chest. "Though I don't have to worry about her putting out." "She will." Brandine smirked. "I'm working on it. And if I were the crazy monogamous type, I'd be so jealous right now." Dana gave his chest a little squeeze. "Okay, what is it?" "What's what?" "Don't give me that." Dana huffed, pulling her hands out of his shirt and waiting for him to face her. She knew that look in his eye. She knew everything about him. What's up? It's just been a bad week. Brandine shrugged. Burke's driving me mad. Look, if that little bimbo's getting clingy. Brandine growled. Don't blow it, Donna. That's not what you said last week. You know what I meant. Brandine rolled his eyes. I'll get this sorted out.